And welcome to another episode of By the Numbers. I'm your host, Richard Lewis. Joining me, as he always does, is the esports historian Duncan Thorin Shields. Sammy D, as he's now known, is pressing the buttons. And we're going to be talking about the CSGO Major. But just before...
Why is it Sammy D, though? Why not Sammy B?
I mean, I haven't claimed that name, mate. I thought he did it because we did an interview with Henry G, so it makes it Henry G and Sammy D. But, I mean...
Yeah, but why D, though? Your name doesn't end in... There's not a D as the surname.
It does.
Something.
Davis.
That's true, actually. For some reason, in my mind, I might have thought your surname is Bainlaw. So now you mentioned that sounds mental. That didn't mind. That made perfect sense up until now.
Only worked together for like 5 years. Is your name Sam Bainlaw?
No, it turns out Bainlaw isn't a real name, Duncan.
That's why Sam wasn't getting into all those after parties. I was putting his name down, Rich. Nah, there's no one on here called Davis. You don't know Bainlaw? Nah, it's not me.
Nah, not him.
Nah, well, who would own up to that?
Well, we'll just start with that.
I'll go with Bainlaw, mate. It's not bad.
By the numbers or something. Put that in.
It's definitely staying in. That's definitely staying in. The edibles have kicked in, so why not? So yeah, obviously, what we will do as well is, unlike other podcasts, we don't want to give anyone blue balls. Like for example, intimating we might ask a vaguely interesting question of a guest. So what I'm going to tell you right off, if you've come for the drama episode, guys, the drama episode is already recorded. It's already in the can. We've already got that ready to go. It's going to be on YouTube and probably before this one makes it to YouTube, if I know Sam's workflow. So we've already done it. 2.5 hours of pure, unadulterated, unfiltered vitriol about all of the drama behind the scenes, everything that was going wrong with the event, all of the show match stuff with Thorin. So that's going to be ready to go. But obviously, we didn't want it to completely overshadow the major. Turns out petty grievances is actually what everyone wants now. Remember when your show is shit, it's just petty grievances. You all turned up for the petty grievances today, didn't you, you cunts? So anyway, the petty grievance episode will be out. But today we are just going to be talking about the results and our thoughts about the major. No doubt with a few petty grievances thrown in. But before we get
I'm calling bullshit on the idea anyone could actually be like a real... It's one thing if you tune in for one episode, but I don't believe anyone's a real fan. They don't like the petty grievances. Because think about the logic, right? What it implies, Rich, is they're not super interested in us and our specific personas on the internet. They just want hardcore analysis of the games, which if you're not interested in our personas, you would presumably think we're incapable of doing because you don't like us as people. So actually, there's no way that's a real audience that are like, I don't like the part where you're talking about how you want to destroy everyone in a video game in the industry. I just want the analysis of the semi-final. You don't. There's no one does. There's a reason why, by the way, on other shows that might be going on right now, they're not asking anything about the games either. They're just going, oh, bloody hell, what about Flamey? He's still around. Fucking, you all know how it is.
I mean, listen, the whole Flamey shit, I don't even know if I want to just throw that in this episode.
That's fire in itself, though, isn't it? Because it's like, mate, how much further? Because here's the thing, there's loads of angles we can go with on that. Because everyone else, this is why bloody Yanko just can't give anyone a break. Yanko has to wake up like, what's he bloody doing to that force or whatever? It's like, Yanko, he's at the end of his career, mate. He's literally like one day from just being booted.
Listen, I'm going to just say it, though. Yanko's right.
Oh, he is, obviously. But it's like,
Yanko's right.
Come on.
Fuck Flamey. Right, we'll come to that. We'll do it. We'll do it.
Circle back. Okay.
Yeah, we will. Let's do the sponsors first. Let's see if we can remember their names, Duncan. So we've got NordVPN, our VPN sponsor. Go to nordvpn.com/RLS to get 74% off the VPNs that will sponsor us. Great sponsor to have. Been with us ages now. Love having them. And of course, obviously, Steel Series. They've re-signed. So we tricked them. Tricked them into thinking they wouldn't be associated with our vile views. So you can go to the Steel Series store. You can just put !Steel Series in the chat. And you can type my name with no space and you get 10% off anything in the store. Really good ahead of Christmas, obviously. Get some gifts, treat yourself, treat your loved ones. Right, let's do it then. Obviously, we were at the Major, weren't we? There was a big CS tournament called the Major, the CSGO Major.
The most viewed in history.
Yes, 2.75 million. We more than doubled the record that we previously had from Boston with 1.3. And it was called PGL Stockholm, and nearly none of it was in Stockholm, but it was in the end. We did go to Stockholm, didn't we? I remember it distinctly. on our day off. And you know, we got the winner we all expected, but we're not going to start there. We're going to basically start at the beginning and talk about the storylines right from the very first week, which obviously the challenger stage, that used to be the minor back in the day. Now, obviously, it's attached on.
The qualifier, technically. Like,
yeah,
minus one before the
exactly.
qualifier.
Yeah,
remember,
true. Yeah, the qualifier. And so there was a couple of big names that dropped out that are probably worth talking about. First, as we talked about on the broadcast, was Big, the German team, obviously, that had recently brought in Gade. We said we didn't really know what to make of them. They went into PGL Stockholm, and we thought, you know, they could be a dangerous opponent at that stage. But ultimately, when it got to the best of threes, they got found out, including a very sort of surprising loss to Mouse, which really sealed their fate. So where now for Big? Obviously, we just saw them get battered as well in the DreamHack Open final against Fnatic. So the last DreamHack Open, as it happens. So, you know, how are we feeling about Big? Do they need to continue to shake up this roster and maybe add more German-speaking Danes?
Yeah, the trouble I have with this roster is even if I just do normal Counterstrike analysis, they obviously don't have enough star power. It's like firepower, like raw skill, like all the basic terminology. Essentially, they just aren't good enough at shooting people in the game, which obviously, with their team's history, isn't all the game's about. Like, I actually do appreciate what they've tried to do in all the iterations of Big, where they've tried to go in a tactical approach. It's why people will forget. As easy as it is to look at the Xantaras cut and go, like, what were you thinking? Like, these were also the guys who kicked out Smooya. And by the way, we're right to do it. If you look at where they went as a team, they became better, you know. So in the past, they've also made decisions that have been based around trying to be like a tactical squad. My problem basically with this team is they're not enough of either. They haven't got enough firepower to just be good at shooting people traditionally, and they haven't got some super next level tactical system where they play 5-6 maps and could go anywhere. And basically, they don't have, like, their problem at the moment is they have neither of what Heroic have. Heroic have good tactics, good map pool, they have pretty good skill, they might have the best star play, so they've got like enough of everything to compete. My problem with Big is they're just slightly underwhelming. Like, I actually think it's the best possible thing for them that they went out in this phase of the tournament, because in the next phase they also could have mixed it up, but they wouldn't have made top 8, and I actually think it would have given them like false hope, essentially. Like, you might have seen they already basically released Legia, they've gone with a different coaching change here. So I do think, listen, that change, I don't know whether that was the right change, but I do think change is needed within that squad. Like, I just don't know what the identity of the team's supposed to be. Like, if I look at these players, you'd have to be an amazing team to make this set of players like top 10 in the world or something. So I personally do think it's sort of like the major showed to me, this hasn't quite worked as an experiment. It's time to make a big move. If you can.
Yeah, I mean, if they can. I mean, the problem Big have always had is that they're essentially a budgetary team, right? They're obviously, what was the fucking Berlin
International Gaming,
you know, which is what Big stands for. And, you know, they are a German-focused team, and they have an appropriately sort of German focused budget, really, and that's why the loss of Xantares, the way that relationship broke down. And by the way, if you go and look at what Xantares has gone on to do with that Eternal Fire lineup, I was the one, you know, I don't always get it right. I was like, oh, that team could be really good and it could upset a ton of people. Turns out Xantares isn't even the IGL anymore, which, if you remember, was meant to be a big selling feature of the project, not just for the team, but also for him. Turns out they were absolute fucking dog shit with him at the helm, almost as if Xantares was sort of like a Turkish Tarek, in the sense, you know, that he can be a very good player, but he just needs to concentrate on shooting people and not sort of get above his station and think he can be the puppet master, you know what I mean? And so Woxic's in charge now. By the way, I don't even know if that's gonna necessarily make it much better. That might be out of the frying pan into the motherfucking fire right there. But, you know, at the end of the day, like, that lineup has done absolutely nothing. And when you look at the names and the experience, you know, Calix is on there as well. Don't forget, they should actually be going to tournaments and sort of, you know, upsetting big names. As it happens, they're doing all these online cups at the moment, and they're just getting banged out almost immediately. So, yeah, I mean, you know, you almost have to wonder if there could be a way back for Xantares. Would that not be, you know, one of those moves where you would sort of have a renewed appreciation, like a trial separation in a relationship? You know, you take some time off and you learn to love them properly for what you've missed out on, because I don't think that Eternal Fire team's going anywhere. I don't see who is in Big's price point that could that Big could pick up. That's the problem. If you're picking up Gade, who literally, I mean, if Big is your last chance saloon, maybe stop drinking. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know who they could get that could actually bring some much needed firepower to this team, honestly.
Yeah, they have two problems, obviously. One is, like, if they're going to go the German angle, they have just limited massively the amount of talent that can possibly be in the team. But the other angle is, even if they went international again and went with, like, English language, as you say, they're not a team that have loads of money. So I feel like there are players, like, for example, to me, I realise it's going to be hard if you want this whole tactical system, but you should obviously probably look for a young fragger, someone who just has skills. Like, that's why, to me, the real tragic part of this whole Big experiment scenario is that basically you look how much talent has come through alternate attacks over the years, and Sprout and the other teams that were always below Big in the pecking order. And it's like, mate, if we could have just had some of these players, like that Dika guy who plays for Ents now, mate, if they're just willing to speak English, this guy would slot immediately into a team like this. He looks like he'd be fucking fire tomorrow. So it's, to me, I agree. They can't get a big name. Like, they can't get some star power name, but, like, there are people, if all you need is shooting people in the head, luckily that is the one thing we have in abundance in Counterstrike. Like, I also do think as well, though, that they might find out ultimately that, like, it's all well and good wanting to be the most tactical team and have a proper system. That's really hard to make work. Like, you got to keep all those pieces together. You can't have anyone go off the boil. Like, I think only the best teams in the world can do that. So, like, fair play to them for trying it. I also do think as well, from my history of knowing people who are in-game leaders and want that type of team, that this is one of the problems people like MSL had, is they tend to become famously, like, they think everything. It's like NFL coaches. You never admit your team isn't good enough. You always just say, there's things we can improve. We're going to go back to we're going to work on the scheme and all that. Because you always think there's some little tweak you can make that'll make it, like, just work. Whereas the problem is, the reason I give the NFL example is almost every roster in the NFL is incomplete. It's the nature of the sport. So, like, realistically, sometimes you have to know when it's like you can't polish a turd, sort of,
Yeah, and I think the big worry, obviously, is, how long does Tabson want to stick around and underachieve for, right? I mean, that is, I think, Tabson sort of proved himself not only as, like, a legitimate star player, and a great all-rounder, but also he's a very underrated IGL, in my opinion. Doesn't really get a lot of plaudits in that area. And so, when you see them, like, getting to the final of DreamHack Open, Fnatic should be a beatable opponent for them. They got blown out 3-0 in that one, and obviously crashing out at the major. You have to think with, Tabson being 26, he might be thinking about, the one last move, give it a chance. There's definitely going to be opportunities, by the way, in the fucking silly season. As we saw today, I'm waking up having a cup of coffee and Team Liquid are in talks with Shox. You're like, fucking hell. How many chances is that going to get? Yeah, so, someone like Tabson, a fragging IGL who speaks fluent English, he's going to get, like, I mean, he could literally be in talks with a few orgs right now, in my opinion. So Big definitely need to change things up if they want to retain one of the jewels in their particular crown. Now, the other big talking point, obviously, was the now removed, they've obviously been kicked out since, but Team Spirit were the other big disappointment, I thought. They had a pretty good year as a whole, but down the straight as we went into the major, they started to become very underwhelming. Their win rate started to drop off. They sort of had that air where it was like, okay, where's Degster going to go? Where's Magic's going to go? As it happened, it was Mir and Chopper that have bailed on the team. But, it's them crashing out at the major at the stage they did was, pretty catastrophic overall, especially given that they did have opportunities to get out of that challenger stage. They beat Tyloo handily, beat Godsent. They just needed to get one of those best of threes over the line and they would have been there, and they failed to do it. So, they're another team, I think, that it's a shame. CIS, all this talent, but Spirit seem to have squandered a lot of it.
Yeah, the key difference for me, if you look at the CIS teams that made it and the ones that didn't, is teams like VP, Entropic. If you look at these teams, they have like a coherent team identity. Spirit basically never did. Like, as much as I was just joking on the desk, there's always a seed of truth in my jokes. I really would ask, what the fuck does Chopper do in this team? Like, when they say he's the in-game leader, dude, it looks like a team that doesn't use strats. Like, it looks like a team that's just a bunch of, like, high-skilled Russian players just trying to, or CIS players, just trying to frag out. Which, when when it works, by the way, it will always be like a somewhat viable formula in Counterstrike, which is why even in this tournament, as you're talking about, like the one that got away from them was the VP series. They had VP bang to rights on the third map of the series, and that would have been them into the next phase. Instead, because they then had to go to the 2-2 game, and who did they draw in the 2-2 game? 4 players who were like the reigning major champions. And that game, by the way, that had nothing to do with skill in that game. That was just a game of like who actually can hold their nerve in a LAN game, a major. And the point is, the Spirit guys, all they had was fragging. It's one of the reasons why, if people want like a very brief like analogy, famously, right, before the Warriors came along in the NBA and like revolutionized the game with all this 3-point shooting, there used to be a line that Charles Barkley used to say, because it was considered like a piece of like well-earned like wisdom from sports history, which was, you know, in the same way in the NFL, they always say like the defense wins championships. The one you see in the NBA was that jump shooting teams don't usually win the championship because the premise goes, taking a jump shot is the thing that's going to be most affected by like nerves, pressure, like fucking people fucking with you, etc. in a big playoff game. So that's the one thing you can't really rely on. You can't rely on this guy's just going to hit a crazy percentage. I think it's the same with like just raw fragging power. It'll always look like the most appealing thing to the new fan, because when you have a random game with no pressure, you blow them out the server and you look unbeatable. But as you saw even with Na'Vi in the final, if people just don't have that game, if they get a little bit rattled or they have an off game, suddenly your level drops loads. So for me, the problem with Spirit was I thought they were actually some decent players. Like, I enjoyed watching some of them play. They did have a chance to go further at this major. Maybe they even could have been an upset merchant. But it is right that they didn't go through. Like, fundamentally, as a team, they're not a very good Counter-Strike team. And I don't think if you look at a lot of the things you'd want outside of shooting people with the guns, they don't really have it. It's why when they fell off in the summer, like you were talking about before, it made sense. Like, yeah, they weren't actually a legit team overall.
Yeah. So those were the big sort of upsets. Everyone else that kind of got through got through in the way that we thought they would. We'll talk a little bit, I suppose, about, you know, increasing in stock in just a moment. But then, of course, we get to the legend stage, right? And man, like, did we fucking call this, or did we fucking call this? Like, evil geniuses. What a waste of everyone's motherfucking time this was. Like, what an absolute waste. I have never seen an easier to call, like, 0-3, I think. It's right up there with, like, you know, some of the most ridiculous underdogs in the majors. And remember, they were a legend because of the disproportionate assignments to NA, that as we were sort of, we had to sort of honour the number of placements for NA teams. I certainly hope we don't moving forward, or we're going to get even worse examples than this. But man alive, like, it was just the easiest 0-3 to call. And, you know, you have to sort of wonder why, like, there must have been an opportunity somewhere along the line where they could have had a roster change, just 1 or 2, and it could have been maybe more competitive than this. But like the EG that showed up to the major was just an absolute embarrassment. In particular, the Copenhagen Flames game where they got 16-2'd. I know it's only a best of 1, but they were just so shockingly behind the level for most teams at the major. And then obviously, of course, now we know, you know, it was a dead team walking, as we said it would be. And I think technically, don't they only have 2 people on the roster right now?
Like that, yeah.
Yeah. So,
yeah, go on.
No, I was just going to say, so, yeah, they're terrible. I mean,
the problem I have with this approach is, even though it was years and years ago, 3 of these players were in the semi of the last major and arguably were a better team than a Vanguard. Like, they might have been a team that could have been in the final if they were on the other side of the bracket. They might even have beaten Astralis. Obviously, that was a competitive match. So the idea 2 years later, like, you're still a whole bunch, you in a top team with massive salaries and all this jazz. You've even had players come and go in the lineup. It's not like you haven't got anyone, you haven't got the same lineup from before. Like Obo and me, who aren't terrible players. These are okay players at least. But the problem is, as soon as Zeus left this team, I knew this team was fucked. Because here's the thing. Zeus knows if he has good pieces to work with and he can add other good pieces, that's a project you can work on. To me, I got the vibe from talking to him. Like, I don't think EG's a team that wants to spend big. At least they didn't during his tenure. It doesn't seem like a team, quite frankly, that looks like they wanted to make any sort of progress. I got the vibe. They just have a team. First of all they ever do to address Counter-Strike is just deny our previously totally legitimate reports that they might have been considering leaving the space. It's the only time you can bloody get them to talk about Counter-Strike. It's to go, no, we aren't staying in Counter. Why are you getting misinformation, which is just what you call when you don't give what a company wants as the information out there. So anyway, I personally do think this was a team that they almost just left it on simmer for fucking 2 years, mate. Like, what was the point of this squad? Basically, the only time they ever had any real hope was when the Zeus came in the team. They won all those tournaments, part of it why they even bloody had RMR points to get to this major. And then once he went, what's the team been since? It's like an even worse version of complexity. It's a bunch of pieces that changed in and out. Everything's gradually degraded. And what hope do you have in this team now? Like, there was no reason they should have even won a game at the major.
No, I mean, not at all. And I mean, look, like it just reeked of sort of, complacency from the moment they got there.
Seem like they don't care, mate. That's the worst part in it.
I mean, put it this way, like Breezy and Cirque, I think, are checked out in the sense that I think they want to be playing with other players. I've got an inkling that we may see some sort of atom smashing of like Liquid and, some Liquid players and some EG players maybe coming together. We'll talk about that in a sec, I guess. But I mean, the one thing that really stands out for me in all of this is, I definitely feel sorry for Michu. I don't think he did anything particularly wrong in this team since he joined. Seemed to be one of the hardest workers, seemed to be one of the most consistent performers. For Obo, I wonder sometimes if he wishes he could have been held the line a bit stronger. I know he's just a young lad, but maybe looking over at what happened with Complexity and compared to where they were and where his career's gone. And he's young enough that if it comes down to it, he can move over to Valorant, but I get the impression he'd rather be in CS as well. For me, the real disappointment in all of this is just like what this entire period in EG has done for Stanislaus' legacy. Like, I just feel, at the end of the day, how many chances does this guy need to sort of show he's like a real good, like IGL? Every time a big opportunity's been he's pretty much fucked it up. And I just feel like, is this being the footnote at the end of his legacy? Like, what a waste of time it's been for him. He's been given great lineup after great lineup after great lineup, but for whatever reason has absolutely squandered it.
Yeah, that's the thing that I find egregious about his career. Listen, he's clearly a guy who has talent. Like, I don't think the teammates are all lying when they say he can be an amazing mid-round caller. And sometimes, early on in a team, he just knows exactly what to do. It's why, a bit famously, he's had all these incredible results against Astralis, actually, in an era when most people have had terrible results against them. But the problem is, you can't be only good against one teammate. Like, my problem with him is twofold. One is what you just said at the end there. He has been given these positions. Now, I don't believe in life in general you get given anything. Normally, you have to take it, you earn it. He hasn't, though. What he literally does, it's unironically the case, is that his mate Daps builds up the fucking team, makes them a good team, and then they always decide, I'd rather have a bit more fragging from the edge, and then they bring in fucking Stanislaus. Even though, by the way, Stanislaus can have been sat around on a fucking chaise long somewhere just eating canapes or something. No one knows ever what he's doing. It's like a Dren when he just waltzed back into Team Liquid. After doing what? Just sitting on your PC? Like, I don't understand this industry. This is almost as bad as when we meme on all the Valorant orgs picking up people who've never played the game. You're picking up people who aren't even trying to play the game and be an IGL or a fucking coach or something. So I find that whack in itself. And then, as you also said there's the other thing that's a killer about his career. Everyone used to try and make the same sort of thing about Carrigan. Like, well, he's really good for the first 6 to 9 months, but then, he drops off. Drops off means they're not the best team in the world. The Carrigan teams are still, like, competent. They'll still be, like, top 8 or top 10 or something. When a Stanislaus team drops off, it can go from, no joke, 2 in the world to, like, 22 in the world. Like, it gets so bad, it's unreal. And that's the thing I have a really hard time with about him as a leader, Rich, is... Listen, you could hire the guy and tell him just call in the mid-round of the game. That can be a role. But I think we've got to start taking the leader part of in-game leader more seriously with some of these guys. Like, he doesn't seem like he has leadership qualities, mate. Like, his teams seem like they wither on the vine. They don't seem like he sort of resurrects you or makes you believe in yourself or takes a guy in who hasn't been used well elsewhere and he doesn't seem like he does it. Seems like he just calls and tries to frag and then eventually it just goes to shit. And quite frankly, I always got the vibe like he's one of those IGLs where I get the vibe like the team's character is his character. He just seems like a bit of a sort of sullen guy sometimes, Yeah,
well, I mean, look, if you're talking about fragging, I mean, frankly, it's embarrassing. Like, his performance here at the major. Like, so in the he didn't have a single positive score in 5 maps. The 5 maps they played. He was 4-19 in the opening game against FaZe, 4-17 against Copenhagen Flames. He nearly had a positive score in the opening map they won against Vitality when he went 16-16, but then 14-17 and 14-19. But he was particularly bad, obviously, on those opening days in the best of ones, where, by the way, if EG were ever going to somehow pull off a miracle and get to the fucking stadium stage, it was going to be by stealing some best of ones. That was the only hope they had. Yes. The fact they couldn't even win a solitary best of one was absolutely outrageous. Now, put that into context, by the way, because obviously, as you know, Daps recently had to stand in while Stanislaw was absent, right? At the back end of August and through September. Stan's performance was actually better. Sorry, not Stan. Daps' performance was actually better than Stan's during the stand-in period.
I'll give you some juice that I heard. You might have heard the same thing, but I'll just say it here because I heard it from a bunch of people and it wasn't like in some confidence. I was basically told that when they asked Daps to come back, they wanted him to come back as a player and just be the IGL mate. So as far as I can tell, it was to replace Stanislaw. And it's just because for whatever reason, Daps decided I want to be a coach instead. Maybe he just didn't want to jump back into being a player. By the way, I would fucking blame them after those teams. Now they've done him dirty. So I actually got the vibe. This almost sounds like they didn't have confidence in Stanislaw months ago, mate.
No, look, this is how it always goes with Stan teams. This is it can't be a coincidence at this point. So the stuff with Optic, all right, there's all sorts of circumstances there. He's took a team, realistically to the top that they're going to achieve, and he's looking to parlay.
That one was fine.
Yeah, no issue with that. And I think Optic's a tremendous achievement. That's why we were all excited about what Stan could do. Obviously, then, the Liquid stuff is an absolute farce. Liquid is just a joke. Where, for whatever reason, you can't get on with the coach, and then you basically put the org in it's a him or me situation. By the way, never deploy that card unless you're 100% certain.
You have to be simple as well. You can't just be a guy in the team. You've got to actually be amazing.
Yeah, and then, obviously, after that, he's never even got back to the heights that he had when he was at Optic, despite, being given these opportunities. Obviously, that he's got that brief spell, probably, when the NRG lineup got to the semi-finals of the Berlin Major, I believe he was on that roster.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay.
Had a few months there.
Yeah, they had a few months. But again, that's all predicated on Daps's foundations.
True.
Yeah. And then obviously they get the big move to EG. They come out the traps running. They win that New York competition. Remember, we had this sort of tantalizing period of time where it was Astralis, Liquid, and EG all, really close together in that top three back in 2019. But it's just been all downhill since. And unfortunately, that is pretty much what happens in every Stanislaw team. Once it starts to go to shit, it breaks apart rapidly. And, again, just from being told behind the scenes, it's because he's a mardy ass cunt, mate. He's not a leader in the sense that if he's upset, he can't hide it from anyone. He can't mask his emotions. He's never going to persuade you we can do this. If he thinks that, everything's wrong, he just never shuts up about how bad it is. Everyone says he's a real miserable cunt to sort of be around. So, it's so fucked up that this guy has had as many opportunities as he has. When, by the way, I can think of other potential IGLs that would have killed for the opportunities he's got.
Oh, for sure.
And now, frankly, if I can't see any future for him in CS the way the NA landscape is. No European organizations rolling the dice on Stanislaw. From what I can tell, by the way, he doesn't even want to be living in Europe anymore. So it's Valorant for him, isn't it? I mean, this is essentially a retirement, in my opinion.
It almost has to be like when you're talking earlier about maybe there's an EG Liquid super, it ain't going to be fucking Stanislaw, I'll tell you that for now. Not least because why would the Liquid players want him? No, I think the tough thing for me is in his career is I also, by the way, this is a thing I've started doing recently, so I'm just going to make it explicit again. You don't get majors off. Right, it's one thing. Maybe I could say I'll give the Brazilians one of those majors. Maybe the one where, they could, you had to use fucking Fox instead of FNX. Maybe I'll give them that one. But aside from that, all these tournaments count. So if you're Stanislaw, you can't tell me yeah, but come on, bro, it was a dead team for the major. Even if it was a dead team, you get that team a few days before the major begins, and you tell them, look, guys, our team's obviously in shit form at the moment. Everything's going badly. We're probably not going to play after this. But look who's in this room. We've got fucking Breezy, Cirque. I've been in major semi-finals. I've been on top teams. These guys are up and coming. Can't we just throw everything away and start over and just play like we're a pod? Can't we just go one last let's just blow it out the doors on one last tournament? No, you come along and you deliver a piss poor performance like this. Because as you say, it's when you contrast them against other people in the scene. You think about motherfuckers like MSL who are just sat around waiting for a phone to ring that's never going to ring so they can get the call up and start being an IGL again. Yeah. And then you have guys like this just getting gifted. Yes, they might not be in good nick, but potentially like supercars, as it were, like the best performance and things you can have, and you're doing nothing with it. Like, I think some of these players, I know sadly because the Valorant retirement home is there, they're not going to learn the lesson. I just kind of want them to teleport in time 2 years in the future and just have a normal office job and go, fuck, this really sucks. I really should have made something of that, like 20k a month and like brilliant players I had to work with. Makes you sort of rethink your whole career in some ways, but they won't until they reach that point, unfortunately.
No, well, I mean, like you say, the Valorant retirement home, it just delays that inevitability. Yes. And not only that, the fact that you can have the Valorant retirement home and then have the streaming retirement home, which is a retirement home inside the Valorant retirement home, and you can just make millions off that. Unfortunately, it's one of the things, and this is a broader topic and probably not worth a sidebar on this podcast, but something to think about. Unfortunately, the sort of the way streaming culture is like, collided with esports in North America in particular. It's basically the out for mediocrity. You will always have the option. You will always be able to make money, and it's always and the people who aren't true competitors in North America, it's always in the back of their mind. It's always in the back of their mind. And, I think definitely it's been a spectre over this EG team for a while. Just as an aside as well, before we go on to talking about the next team, Stan, the worst ranked player at the major. So, yeah, I mean, as last hurrahs go, utter dog shit. And so staying on NA, obviously Liquid weren't too far behind them. Went out 12th to 14th after, they'd finished third in the North American RMR. They'd lost the Godsent there, which isn't particularly great. Hadn't done well in the Blast Premier Fall event before that. And then, they sort of come into Stockholm. We didn't know what we were going to get in the best of ones. They lose to Entropic, who were one of the teams that really increased their stock at this event. They lost to Furia, and they got 2-0'd by FaZe on Twist's return in a series where, honestly, that first map, Inferno, which was Liquid's pick, was pretty embarrassing. And then they weren't able to hold their nerve when it got to the OTs on Mirage, and they lose 2-0. Powerhouse performance from Brokey, which we'll get to when we talk about FaZe. But yeah, for me, I just think NA is in all hell of a mess now, and it probably is his time to. We're gonna have to start, deconstructing some of these myths and sort of tearing apart some of these sacred cows, because there are a number of people that get a constant pass based on the fact that their stat line is generally good, but they create problems behind the scenes that make functional teams nigh on impossible. Yes. So I'll just say it, here you go, starter for 10, Elige is the problem.
I mean, I will say, if you look at his teams, he is the only one left. Like, people will forget it was him and Nitro were the original members if you go way back to Team Liquid. So even Naf only joined in, I think it was 2018, I think it was the beginning of 2018 is when he joined. So all I'll say is this: I made this point years and years ago, and a lot of people probably thought, what the fuck is he talking about? Where I said, because I had info from Hiko and others that were in Team Liquid at the time, I said, what you guys don't know is Elige hates Simple, because Simple's like a flamboyant toxic player who's just in your face with it. But what they don't know is part of why Elige hates that is he's just a passive, sort of like an introverted toxic individual, and his way of being toxic is he'll just give you the silent treatment. And I've heard, by the way, I think he's a brilliant individual player, but I can't ignore the things I hear in the scene. I've heard over the years from a number of teammates, he still does that sometimes. And basically, he's a guy where it's not that he's the tyrant and he just stops everyone talking. It's more like you have to walk on eggshells a bit around him. Like, everything has to be exactly the way he wants. By the way, this reminds me of certain people like Shocks, etc. in their career, where Nico, where it's like, it's not that this is the crazy thing about them. I get why they don't think they're toxic, because what they're saying is, no, but I'm not telling you have to be that way. But other people just learn from experience. It does have to be their way. Otherwise, things tend to go to shit, or they get pissy, or they don't perform to their level. So what you end up doing is there's almost an emperor has no clothes scenario where no one says it, but everyone really knows we're all basically just in some fucked up relationship with this one guy where we don't all do everything exactly where he likes. We're shit out of luck. So yeah, I've had the similar vibe from some of the teammates, and people don't know. I'll tie it to a story that I've actually referenced in the past, but people always forget, which is in 2017, funny enough, around the time of all that Stanislaw Zeus shit, they actually did kick Elige out of Team Liquid. They just didn't do it officially. And because in the sort of, I think it was like a month or so, I think it was during the player break, because basically during the player break, they didn't get a replacement, and instead he came back to the team. No one in public actually knows it happened unless they watch this podcast. So all I'll say is, you don't kick a guy like that out because he's bad. He's never been bad at the game. He's a fantastic individual player. But yeah, I sort of agree. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say he's like the problem and says like he's not the only problem, clearly. But as far as I can tell, he is a running thread through all the teams he's been in on some level. He's got some things you have to dictate to that aren't like normal players for sure.
I think, that there is some overlap with what we were talking about when we were talking about Reginald and TSM. Now, keep in mind, I've interviewed Elige, and I've said to Elige, to his face, it's your team, isn't it? And you basically call all of the shots, and that is abundantly clear from the outside looking in. And he denied it, said that's not how it is.
Notice that's the same thing when Equal. They always want to be like, I'm not having any influence.
Yeah, true. But for me, Liquid have essentially enabled Elige as well. Because, every time there's been another strong personality over there, it does seem to be ultimately what it boils down to is Elige is our star player, Elige is our branding, he gets what he wants when we're happy that that's the arrangement. We'll even take a temporary tumultuous time of underperformance to essentially keep Elige on the roster. And I think when you do that, like when you're one of those teams that essentially picks one player because they are an iconic player on your roster, we've seen this with other lineups down the years in CS especially. You're essentially, you're all in, and the player knows it, and that makes the situation 10 times as worse. So, I mean, in this instance, it's to me, I think Elige wants to play with a certain personality type, and that personality type is someone who never gets RC, never gets upset, shares all of the same ideas about the game, because Elige, by the way, his thought process about the game that he's explained it to me is he creates, in every game situation, he has like a mind map of when this happens, you do this, and then if they react to it this way, you do that. For him, he's not a player that feels for the game. He's a player who has spent hours creating what he believes the ultimate correct system, the ultimate correct methodology via which to play Counterstrike. Now, unfortunately, if you don't share that methodology, let's say, for example, you're a Stewie 2K who likes to do what he feels in the moment, or he likes to try and create chaos on the server when the team's losing. Elige is never going to be, well, your way's good too. No, he doesn't feel that way. He believes he's cracked it in his mind. He's unlocked the Da Vinci Code of the perfect way to play Counter-Strike. And so, unfortunately, I feel like unless you're a very quiet dude like a NAF, you're going to really struggle to be on a team with this guy. And like you say, you're going to end up permanently walking about on eggshells. It's no coincidence to see, Adren is the guy that's coming back. I get the feeling Elige never wanted him to go. It's not a coincidence that Elige is like, I'd really like Nitro to come back. Nitro, by the way, one of the most passive, quiet guys, just, way more mature than your average CS player, by the way. And so, yeah, I feel like when I say Elige is the problem, I don't mean Elige the player. I mean the spectre of Elige over this team. The fact that if it's a choice between Elige and you will never, it's never you. It's never going to be you. Liquid are fully behind Elige. And so anyway, I feel that after this really poor performance, I think Liquid's going to break up as well. I really do. And I don't know which way it's going to go. But if I was placing bets, I think Grim's out. By the way, all of the pressure that was put on Grim, I think that's emanated from Elige, because he doesn't play the way Elige sort of approves of, and he's still got a lot to learn. I think this was Grim's chance, and it's been the classic poison chalice where you've had to step up too much too soon and play with big egos and big reputations. I think Grim's back off to the NA Counter-Strike wasteland and probably will eventually find his way to Valorant, sadly. I think Stewie's going to maybe hook up perhaps even some of the EG guys. I don't know. Naf and Elige seem to be simpatico. Fallen looks like he's off to make a Brazilian super team. We'll talk about that when we get to the Roster Mania episode in a few days. But I could even see Elige jumping to Valorant now, by the way. I legitimately could see him making the decision to go out while his stock is high and move across to Valorant. He's been doing all this content creation on YouTube. He's been, he's putting out voice comms and everything. I could literally see him jumping across to Valorant, because if he goes now, before things get really shit over at Liquid, I think he walks into a top Valorant team and makes a salary equivalent to what he would get in CS.
Oh, I've no doubt he does. I just think what an absolute tragedy that would be, because here's the difference, right? There are other names that I do think were a loss to Counterstrike. Ethan, Daps, who else? Like, I wouldn't personally put people like Tens because they hadn't made it yet. People who were actually legit, like they could still play, basically, right? Those are the players I missed that went over to that game. The idea that like Elige would go, like, essentially, this guy, I don't know, I'd have to check the stats, but he's probably still a top 20 player in the world for this year.
Sure.
Like, he's still a fantastic individual player. So that would easily be the biggest talent and name that's gone over there. And yeah, it would only be effectively because what has he got left in CSGO? Because the part that maybe you didn't verbalize there is, if they're making some sort of super team out of EG and Team Liquid players, let's say it isn't Elige, maybe it is, who knows? If it isn't, he's fucking shit out of luck then. He's right back where he was in 2017 where I said he was getting kicked out the team. Like, who's he going to play with? Like, clearly, by the way, he's put himself in a terrible situation, which is if he has this elitism, which I suspect he does, well, spoiler, there's not going to be any fucking NA pros out there that are going to fit the bill if you can't play with Fallen, Stewie 2K. Like, if these players aren't good enough for you, mate, there's no one in Triumph or any of these fucking NA teams that you're going to, or Extra Salt, you're not going to fuck with those guys. And by the way, they might think they're going to fuck with you. They definitely won't once they try and play with you. So I have to say, I could imagine him being in a really bad spot. That's one of those moments as well, by the way, where I hope someone like that does actually reflect on their career and take stock. Because what you have to ask a player like that eventually is, look, mate, if we effectively do set everything up the way you like it with the people you like, how can you not then take responsibility for the results? Like, the results are what you essentially asked for. If we gave you all the inputs you like, you can't not like the output. Like, you set this scenario up this way. So one thing I would wonder from someone like that is, how do you think it's going to work out? Like, do you think Adren would just come back with the same team Moses had and make them 3 times better? Like, the hubris of that is ridiculous, mate. Like, at some point you have to eventually sort of like admit you fucked up, It's the same way, funnily enough. It's why if anyone ever saw, right, I saw someone resurrected that old article I made in 2016 about Simple, where I was sort of telling him basically the shit that he sort of learned now, like, you have to basically like empower your teammates and you can't judge them on your skill level. One of the points I was trying to make in that article was that your social skills and your teammate skills, you can work on them the same way you work on your fucking deagle in a server or jumping no scope, mate. In the same way as you go day by day and you just tweak it until it gets good, you got to do that with your team understanding. So I would hope Elige eventually is going to realise you can be the best individual player you want, mate, but until you can actually be like a leader. By the way, there's another thing I hate is the vibe of what you're saying. Essentially, things have been changed to tailor what he wants, but kind of like Nico specifically in FaZe, he then wants to at the end turn around and go, I didn't ask for any of this. It's like, nah, fuck off, mate. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you'll ever have that come to Jesus moment. In fact, again, my read on it is, because I don't know how much of Valorant you follow. I obviously keep my hand in. But yeah, obviously Nitro is, look, is going. People are saying, "Oh, is he going to come back to CS?" Because he's bailed, and I could see those two hooking up, maybe even slotting into a Valorant team. Maybe they even, I don't even know. Maybe Liquid even make changes to their Valorant team. So, if I don't think Elige is going to stick around in what CS looks like in NA now, because I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, look, Cloud9 are coming back." They're not picking up NA players, guys. Like, if they are coming back, they're going to be one of the orgs in for like Copenhagen Flames or something like that. They're not. There isn't an NA team out there. I feel mega sorry for the heirs apparent, like OC and Fang, who are never going to get that opportunity to play for like a Team Liquid or an Evil Geniuses or a Cloud9, because they should have done. They should have had that. But unfortunately, the people who run those orgs lack the vision and lack the ability to sort of think in dynastic terms. They think about the here and now and what's popular. And so as a result, when things look bleak, they don't stick around and go, right, well, we'll just batten down the hatches. We'll play within our budget. They go, no, what's the next big thing? And we'll just throw all our money into that. So yeah, I don't know, man. My spider sense tells me this Liquid team is donezo, and it might be donezo in a way people can't conceive of. As in, they're not going to do like a 3+2 rebuild around the Liege. As in, it might be a Liege that's actually had enough and decided to throw in the towel. Frankly, because I mean, think like you say, imagine being a top 20 player in the world, and these are your finishes. You know, he can make a fortune in Valorant, and he knows it. So. The other one, of course, the big one, Astralis, nearly didn't even make it to the Legend stage. They were that beat up, which, by the way, wasn't a surprise to me. Anyone that thought this was like going to be vintage Astralis at the event is so fucking crazy.
People implying they'd be making a playoff run. Yeah, I saw like real analysts in the scene saying that. I was like, what the fuck? Holy shit.
Yeah, I know. I literally couldn't believe this. Like, I mean, you know, think about everything that they went through just before this. Think about how we were describing their IEM fall run as like almost like a miracle run, right? Like, you know, if it wasn't for the format, they wouldn't have got that far. Think about it. They had like what 3 16-14s on best of ones, then a 2-0 over Fiend. Before getting knocked out by Ents and Vitality, who, by the way, were the only 2 real teams that they played. They did play Heroic, but again, best of one, so whatever. So, you know, there was no way. Not to mention, by the way, everybody behind the scenes knew what was going on in terms of this wasn't the team that was going to stick together. I mean, by the way, a double fuck you to Bubsky. Like, they fucking DP'd that motherfucker. It's so ridiculous how fucked over he got.
The joke is they were like, oh, sorry, mate. I know it's come out of nowhere, but again, we haven't got room for you at the inn, but it's all right. Wait till the next one. And then they were like, before we can even give you another chance to play, let's just make it explicitly clear we're signing more players instead of you. No, that's mad, isn't it? It's like the way they fucked this guy over is epic. Like, dude, you would actually think, no joke, that like Bobsky is just like the fucking effigy of me and you that Nicola Nyholm's just burning to like fucking get revenge in some voodoo way back. Like, it's mentally like, you're aware Nicola Nyholm, he's not related to us or anything, but he's actually one of your players that you're fucking over, mate. It's mental.
No, but that's a bad thing. Remember, Nicola Nyholm's the guy who tweeted out he should be playing. Do you remember that? It's your team. You're in charge. You have all the power, mate. So yeah, madness. But anyway, forget that. Obviously, it sort of transpires, you know, with that move. Obviously, the Vitality move. That's been made where, you know, supposedly, you know, Zonic and Magus and Dupree are going across the fucking, you know, Vitality and everything else that's going on. So apparently that was a done deal before the major, is what everyone behind the scenes is saying.
Mate, imagine being Bobsky. So you're telling me the team's dead. Most of the people are leaving. Can I just play for this major? Nah, fuck you. Why can't he even just play the dead team? Like, it's so reasonable, isn't it? It's so reasonable.
He's not even allowed. Like, so obviously, you know, when you're at the major and shit, all rumors are all swirling around and you hear all sorts of stuff. But apparently that there were people on Vitality that knew that move was done, i.e. the ones that get to stay. There were the Astralis guys knew that team,
by the way.
Yeah. Oh, you mate, they love a secret meeting. Those motherfuckers, don't they? Right? And apparently Xtaz didn't know he was getting replaced either, which, you know, as we'll talk about, like, I think that's what when I think about harsh firings, that's the outrageous one. Now, don't get me wrong. Shades of when Nork got replaced by Device. You've done this scenario, you played really well. It is Zonic, but I don't know about that one, mate. I don't even know what. Like, Zonic definitely is the GOAT just in terms of pure achievement. I really like the way Xtaz handles himself, and I think he's a really, really good coach. He's definitely like top 2. You can have the argument about him and Zonic all you want. But for him to get replaced is pretty fucking harsh, you know?
Yeah, but that's how you know Zonic is the godfather, mate. That's where he was just like, my boys won't play for you unless I am the coach as well. They're like, well, we've already sort of got a really good coach. Then you have no players. Like, come along, boys. What does that you say? Like, I mean, he clearly didn't he? He's just a gangster. He just gets what he wants.
Well, which is fair. You know, if you are the best, you get what you want, right? So that makes sense.
When I'm at events, anyway.
The Thorin's Law, I believe it's called. But yeah, man, that was so. Anyway, this Astralis team, obviously, you know, the dead team announcement happened. By the way, the second they were out,
it's outrageous, isn't it?
Of the major.
Why did everyone? Because it started at the last major, Starlight of Berlin. Why did everyone in orgs become a cunt now? So, like, if you remember, both Vitality cut MBK and Ents kicked LXCB like the day after they got kicked out. Before the tournament even ends, you don't even let all the fresh bodies just be like removed from the battlefield. You're just like, by the way, you're fired. Like, why is everyone being a massive cunt? Like, it's not like there's other tournaments you can play in the meantime. It's like you get on the next bus, lads. We're going to the next land now. There's still the major going on. Like, why are you just going out your way to just piss in the guy's face completely?
I think the best part.
It's just disrespected it.
Yeah, but I think the best one was ESL doing reruns during.
How pathetic are these cunts?
Reruns of classic games during the major.
I know, as though their hope, right, is that some fan who knows enough about CS to want to watch the major, but doesn't know that he's not on the major channels. Like, is he just the major? All right, sound. And he's just watching a rerunner, like, I don't know, ESL 1 New York 2019. It's like, sound, this is good. Like, what? How many viewers are you even leeching there? You pathetic
that's the bad thing. It had like between 2,000 and 3,000 at all times. Who are those people? That's what I want to know. Who are you? What the fuck are you? It's mad, isn't it?
Not least, I don't know if you're aware of this, guys. That VOD's on YouTube. You can just go watch it anytime you want. You don't have to watch it live. It's not live. The fucking rerun. It's all. Listen, at least in other sports that you can't have access to the VOD library. They're all just on the internet for free. It's esports. You're daft fun.
It's ridiculous, isn't it, mate?
Get in that one and go watch the major live.
I know. Yeah, watch history as it happens. You know, or. Ridiculous. But anyway, so Astralis, you know, they did well to get to the legend stage. In truth, like you said, in that Spirit game, they were the one that held their nerve. But in a way, maybe they almost wish they didn't, because they beat Furia in that best of one at the start, and you're like, oh bloody hell, the old boys have still got it. I remember Maniac looking into our eyes, going, it. Yeah, he wasn't he? He was like, see, this is a mark of a champion, laying it on.
If people don't get it, was basically like his whole angle was going to be like, you know, it doesn't matter if you're a bit washed as a player, like as long as you're a veteran and you'll always shine through, you know. And his problem was he looked like he was a genius in the Spirit game because he was totally right. But the problem is, like, it's not a movie, Maniac. At the end of the day, you have to be able to shoot people in the game, and that was always going to fall off on it.
Yeah, but no, that was the best thing, because literally after the Furia game, he was like, you see, all bets are off now for the Astralis. All bets are off, you know, and then they got 16-1 by Device's NIP.
That had me malding, because you know the worst part about it is I even did that thing where last second I switched and I picked up.
No, you did.
All because of fucking Yanko making all these points, right? And then Maniac wasn't on the desk for that segment. And I even said to Maniac in agreement, because here's the thing, by the way, he's so legit. He is just like he is on camera, by the way, guys. He's such a legit guy. He just said it honestly. I said, after they got wrecked, I said, would you have picked Astralis, Steph? You'd be on desk. He goes, of course. I'm like, oh, fuck this. Like, of all the times this guy couldn't just be on the desk and make that massive 10-minute fucking speech, and then this result happened. Instead, he gets fucking shielded by the fucking, I don't know, the Illuminati that James Bardoff was referring to or whatever. Like, you know, like, whatever. I mean, it's that 16-1 though, because we built it up. We made so much narrative story building. Device, of course, going to play against. Will Astralis shut him down? Will they know? Like, 16-1. Like, it was just garbage, wasn't it? It was absolute garbage. It was terrible.
It was so good as well, because they got that iconic photograph. I wish I knew the photographer's name, but you know, easily the esports photo of the year of a broken down, dilapidated Astralis. And by the way, I don't know if you can find it, Sam, but if you can, bring it up while I'm talking. A broken down, dilapidated Astralis sort of looking over just as a blurry, long-necked Device sort of just comes into shot like that. And it you know, in that moment, it sort of made me feel good about the NIP Dark Horse pick I'd done. I thought, right, yeah, actually, they're ready. That's going to give them so much confidence moving forward. And Astralis are absolutely...
Put on screen. I found it for you. There you go.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, so I was like, you know, this is going to kickstart NIP. I'm going to look like a genius, and it also makes me look like a genius when I said Astralis were an absolute paper tiger. I mean, keep in mind, by the way, at the point they got 16-1 by NIP when everyone was given the fucking Any Given Sunday speeches. They beat Godsent in a best of three, Pain in a best of three, where they nearly dropped a map against Pain and had to do a ridiculous comeback on Ancient. Spirit, who perennial chokers, and a best of one against Furia. Fuck off. They're whack results for a team of Astralis' stature. But it was great because it set up what came next. And that is, as I said, a 16-1 from Device. And then, of course, we got the fucking grudge match. Heroic versus Astralis. The cast out fucking, alleged cheaters that the whole scene said they were. By the way, you will notice, we didn't even talk about this in the drama episode, all it took to make Reddit love Heroic was for me and you to point out that probably did over-celebrate a little bit by jumping on them chairs for limping through the fucking challenger stage.
And by the way, I'll just say to morons out there,
Heroic now!
Cadian himself, publicly and privately, agreed with us, because the actual sentiment, I mean, people watching this show know I'm preaching to the choir, but the sentiment wasn't never celebrate. Because obviously that would be a moronic fucking sentiment, wouldn't it? That's why only morons like you, who put it through your stupid little brain, that you chopped all the edges off to make it a circle so it fit through your dumb fuck. What we actually said, which had nuance, was for a team that's supposed to be one of the favourites for the tournament and should have 3-0'd the Swiss system, the idea you're narrowly going through on the last game is actually ridiculous. At that point, if you're jumping up and down celebrating like you won the World Cup, I do kind of question, like, where's your head at in this tournament, Like, there's even a famous saying I like to repeat that some, like, legendary coach said, where when he took a team to, like, some, I don't know, let's say, like, a conference championship or something for the first time, he said, act like you're supposed to be here. Like, don't go overboard. Like, basically, act like this is where you're meant to be playing. Like, it isn't a shock you're here. So, even though, like, you can put all the extenuating circumstances, of course, wow, we made it through, we didn't blow it, people thought we were cheaters, would have been called. We get all that, but no, I agree. The idea that, like, again, us making, by the way, not even vaguely the most controversial statement we made all of the entire tournament, the idea that's all it takes for people. Yeah. 1 second earlier, like, I hate Heroic and think they cheat. What? They think they shouldn't celebrate as much. Well, now I love them. Like, they're just feckless. I know that word, by the way. I know it's like more of a British term. Look it up. It's perfect explanation of Reddit. They're just people who are just fucking cretins, but they just blow whichever way the wind blows. They just oh no, I mean something different.
Well, I put it this way, Cadian, like, bears absolutely no ill will. Like, we saw him at the after party, and he's remains the same old Cadian, no problems there at all. Even trying to diffuse the ridiculous overreaction, where once again people react to things we didn't actually say. Exactly. On Reddit in the HLTV interview we did. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to just say it this way. 2 players I admire from football, Roy Keane. I remember famously when, like, everyone, they were like, they just won the FA Cup or something, and they went to interview Roy Keane, and they were like, why aren't you celebrating? He goes, I'm done with that now, I've got training tomorrow, and just fucked off. And I also remember Neville Southall, like the Welsh goalkeeping legend, right? Yeah, well, he won an FA Cup with Everton, and all his team were, like, celebrating in the dressing room and popping champagne, and Neville Southall's just getting dressed. And somebody said, like, where are you going, Neville? He goes, I've got to take the bins out tonight. And he just
legend.
It just fucked off. Just fucked off while his team's celebrating. And it's like, to him, yeah, okay, the moment is now over. We have done it. We have won it. I am off now. I'll see it tomorrow when hopefully we can win some more. You know what I mean? And so obviously, yeah, well, one aspect to it, I will admit, I didn't really take into consideration was, I think what they were celebrating wasn't the victory, but it was the fact they hadn't lost. And they could probably see for themselves a world where if they'd gone out at that stage and didn't get through the Swiss system, they would have been, they wouldn't have been able to go on the internet. Let's be real. Put it this way, if you were crying about at the prospect of going to a restaurant and someone calling you a cunt, what would have happened if you'd crashed out would have been 10 times as bad. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't take that into consideration in the moment. But anyway, so yeah, we get the Astralis Heroic grudge match, Heroic win comfortably, and then it sets up Vitality versus Astralis, which, by the way, in retrospect, when you consider the move was supposedly already agreed.
Outrageous, actually, isn't it?
You know?
Because there's one thing I want to actually bring up with you. Obviously, this is not a Roster Mini episode, but we'll do it for this one, though. I just want to ask your thoughts on that, because I saw a random fan, I retweeted it when he said it, because I thought it was a good point. That's a problem I do have. It's like, it's one thing where it's one thing where players are like, look, let's recruit him after this event, you know. That's still not a done deal. If this deal was done, I have an issue with you then playing against your future players, and indeed with your former players. Like, in that scenario, I'm not a fan of that. I don't want a world where that exists.
Yeah, I mean, look, in reality, I'm trying to think that there's definitely analogues to this situation in sport where somebody is known to be joining a new team, but has to play against the team they are going to join. It's certainly happened more than once in football. Because obviously at the point when you have agreed the deal is typically when a contract expires. And so obviously there's no clauses or anything in that moment. You haven't like signed them and essentially bought out their contract. So you're not activating any buyout clauses where they wouldn't be able to play. You've just had talks to them, 6 months typically before the end of their contract and said, do you want to play for us next season? So the assumption always is that, they're going to play the hardest for their current employers. But I mean, listen, I don't think there was any fuckery in this. I don't think like the Astralis guys downed their tools because, it was better for Vitality to go further because they were joining them down the road. No, I'm pretty sure Astralis would have wanted, just for legacy purposes, to have been in that top 8, of course. But yeah, I mean, in retrospect, it's not great. It's not a great look, but I mean, I don't know what really can be done about this. I think if they'd been more transparent going into the major. But the problem with that was when the guys who were at the teams who know they're being cut, like the ones at Vitality, it's massively demoralizing. So it essentially hurts your chances as well. So probably the way it happened, where it was announced the minute they went out of the major and people can sort of put the pieces together, probably the best way. Not a massive drama, considering how corrupt esports is in general for me.
Here's a stat for you. You'll like this one. So in the phase that we're talking about, like when they went to the new legend stage, in the second phase of the major, 0 players on Astralis were able to average a 1.0 HLTV rating. The highest was Dupree, who had a 0.99. Yeah. Now, I made this point on the desk. So this is why, by the way, I don't care whether I do another major or not, but this is why you will never replace me in Counterstrike. Because there are certain people who, when they know it's safe, they'll criticize a player. So maybe they criticize Fallen on Team Liquid now because they know he's probably going to bounce in another job. It's not where he was ever going to play long term, and it's not the team he made all his fame on. So it's kind of safe to make a mild criticism of him. You can even mildly criticize Olofmeister. But where the fuck are all the analysts going up Astralis' arse for this event? How is it cool to have 4 players who are the reigning major champions and be a complete damp squib at the event? How is it cool for nobody to perform on the team? Nobody. Zipnik's just got the bag of all bags. Absolute dog shit. Glaive, but just had a kid. That doesn't matter, mate. It doesn't matter. Am I the only one missing that, like, when legendary football players have a career, they also have the child and the family, like, during the career? Like, I've heard the stories where people's sons born, like, the day before cup final, they go win the cup final. Like, listen, I'll give you all the leeway in the world, but someone's got to perform on the team. Everyone can't just be whack. Like, I thought this sucked, mate, because here's the problem. I made this point and no one wants to ride with it. If you're going to tell me Glaive is the fucking GOAT, how can you take one player out of his team and he's just incapable of anything? Of anything? What is this?
A couple of points to that where I would give some mild pushback. First of all, in the Astralis Vitality series, as memory serves me from watching it, I thought Glaive was one of the better players for us.
He was generally the best players they had individually, yeah.
And I think over the course of the tournament as well, I'd like to see statistics because I think he probably is, if Dupree was the best in that
he's
stage.
The second best performer.
Yeah. So fair enough. And then obviously, let's be real, the lucky move is too much too soon. Remember, this is Astralis without device, but not just without device. If you took a proven top 10 AWPer and slotted them in, You know, who knows what happens?
This is what beggars belief about this team is like, either you're going to ride with our position, which is this is all fucking essentially the Astralis org manipulating the roster and the scene and the stock market and all the rest of that jazz, and that's what they're always doing. So they have to make it look like, look, he's a talent they developed. They have to make it look like he's the true replacement. You know, they have to do all this stuff for PR. The problem is no one else in the scene buys our angle, Richard. If I go and listen to that dog shit HLTV podcast, they're going to talk like they really believe Lucky was ever a real player and Bobski was going to be a star. They're going to talk in the fictional reality that Astralis has created. So if I go into their world for a moment and I go, if you bring Glaive to the tournament, you're not saying, well, he's just had a kid. You're going, he's totally fine to play the World Championship. If you bring Lucky in to replace Device, you are saying he can replace Device. You aren't saying, look, I'm doing it as a fake PR move, and obviously I don't really believe in this guy, and I'll fucking sell him the second I can get blamed. No, you're not doing that. So my problem is, like, can people pick a reality to be in? Because I'm totally cool with us all saying this was not a real team, a real tournament. They knew this was that lineup will never play again as a 5-man lineup. If you do all that, I'm fine with excusing the result. Of course, this is what I'd expect. It's not a real fucking squad, but that's not the way they're billing it for media, is it? So it's like, I just want a bit of consistency from people, you know.
No, and that's fair as well. I mean, the reality is, like, for me, like, I never bought the Lucky move. I was saying people should give this guy time, you know, because people do have to give these young players time, especially Orpers, mate, because you're living in a fucking world that's insane. You're living in a world where every shot you miss but is a potentially round-losing catastrophe.
Yes.
Like, it's the pressure you are under. And then, but for me, there is no world, by the way, where had they took Bubsky and just tried to make it work somehow, for me, they do better than this every time.
I'm almost certain they would. I agree with you. Here's the difference. Like, you also, by the way, there's another thing. Bearing in mind, Lucky probably wasn't going to make it, because it is ridiculous to expect that. Like, I mean, technically, isn't this his first ever real LAN? I think it is. This might be his first real, because he wasn't at Cologne, by the way. That was on the ad. This might be the guy's first ever real LAN. He's supposed to play at the major. Fuck off. And have all the expectations that you're supposed to make top 8, basically, if you're in Astralis. So that is unreasonable. So yeah, if you'd have just put Bobsky in, and by the way, maybe even just run like Dupree on the AWP, or don't even run an AWP much, I think you do better. I agree. I think that mix of players also, whether it's a dead team or not, would at least fight. You know, you'd have some strength in the squad.
Yeah, well, and obviously, I mean, listen, I think Bubsky as well, probably knowing I am out after this. I mean, he's motivated. Unfortunately, I think Lucky was more, you know, susceptible to the pressure. Like, in the same way, you know, you saw Jaquinho have a crumble in the past. Like, it's tough. Bedding in a new AWP is tough. Bedding in players who don't have that tenure and that big game experience, knowing how to alternate between aggressive modes and passive modes and good rotations and all the rest of it. You know, I felt very sorry for Lucky this event, but that isn't going to excuse the performance for me. He was really out of sorts.
I agree with you, by the way. I separate him from Astralis. Listen, he has to take the best offer he can get. That's just the way the game works when you're a player. The question is, why the fuck is Astralis putting him in the team? And sadly, I think I know the reason. It just has nothing to do with trying to be the best competitive CS team right now.
Yeah,
it was just a placeholder, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, listen, as we know now,
prediction for you as well. I'll give you a quick prediction. So everyone else is also going to say the same thing that Dupree was saying publicly. They're going to go, give him time, Richard. He has to develop into the player Device is going to become. I even had morons trying to argue with me. You know from source, this can't be true. They were trying to imply Device himself wasn't that good back in the day. He was still a top player, dickhead. He wasn't some nobody thrust from nothing into it. He was a guy, in fact, famous. He wasn't the whole thing with him, like that he just didn't put enough time in the CS or something. He used to fuck around with badminton or something mental, like, wasn't it? Some weird angle like that.
It might have been. Was it? Yeah, it might have been badminton or I think badminton might be right.
Playing, right?
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, I mean, basically everybody knew. Like, if you knew Device, like back when he was a kid, and that, like, everyone knew. Like, he had the raw skills. Like, and I knew a ton of people who said, like, he'll be a top tier player one day, you know. And
I think in 2013, Anders told me something like he will be the best Danish player one day. Back when everyone else was going, no, it's fucking, you know, I don't know, fucking probably like Dupree or something at the time. No, what I would say is this. Here's a prediction for you, even. I predict in like the next 6 to 8 months, Lucky isn't even on Astralis. Either he just gets cut or put on the bench, or they straight up flip this guy. Like, I don't even think they really believe in him for the future of the team. I think they were just waiting, Richard, while they wanted to get Flameth, maybe other names that didn't accept the offer, etc. So I personally don't even believe in good faith. They actually do want to build this guy, which I think is, by the way, also tragic, because now if he doesn't have a good, I don't even know how many more lands he's going to go to, but if he doesn't have many more good performances under pressure, he'll also just get tossed on the scrap heap by everyone else, won't he? He won't just get the next team down.
The other thing I will say though is, and obviously we're not talking about the roster moves so much, guys, because we've got a roster mania episode coming in like a few days. But just to obviously with the new look roster, Config being on there and Blame F being on there, I mean, I feel that those moves are good, and it probably the additional firepower, assuming Config heals from his wrist injury and Blame F not having the pressure of being an IGL and just getting to be bait F and do his lurking style without any other considerations. I think that additional firepower will actually buy Lucky some time on the team. So if he can turn it around, this is going to be the window to do it. But I also do have a gut feeling that actually somebody else is going to be fleshing out this roster as soon as a good Danish AWPer presents themselves, not Acor, before anyone says it. Right, next team to talk about. Go on, let's talk about, I guess I can segue there. Let's talk about Mouse. Why not? I thought they did well to get as far as they did at this event. Personally, I've said it for a while. They don't impress me. I think they're a bit of a dead team. I just don't see where they're going. Because keep in mind, I watched DreamHack as well. I saw them lose to that Mad Lions team twice. I don't know, man. I'm just not vibing with it. It's like I think they're in the process of doing the ROPS farewell tour at the moment, mate. Because if you look at the results they had at Stockholm, yeah, they beat Ents. That was like a surprise for me. But that was it, right? They lost to Furia, they lost to Nip, they lost to Virtus Pro. Oh yeah, they did beat Big to get there in the first place. Yeah, but I mean, they're just not a top tier team anymore in the way that they were. Thinking back to the Flashpoint surprise, it's and as soon as Rop scores, what have you got? Really,
nothing.
Yeah. So, and how are they holding on to this guy? Like they must care about him enough on some level that he's been loyal enough, even though he's intimated, come and get me, I've got a buyout, blah, blah, blah. They must be like, okay, we will sell you now. How much more do you want out of a player? Like he was the best player at this event by a long way.
Even if you look at the results they've had with him since Flashpoint, it's not like you're winning tournaments and you're not really in the mix. So it's not really the only upside if you Mouse Sports is sell him and get a nice buyout. You've probably still got time to get a pretty healthy sum, closer to $1 million than half. You can probably get a nice amount. And with that, you could do so much of your Mouse Sports. And listen, you definitely don't have anywhere close to what you had when you had Rops. But then again, that was months ago. Like, I agree with you. Like, Rops is the best player. I don't think he had necessarily the greatest tournament in this team. It looks like he also knows the team's fucking dead and he's waiting to leave. He didn't look like he was vibing with them in that regard. But yeah, the problem is you're not going to replace him with a player as good, but you can do so much with $1 million if you're Mouse Sports. And there's like at least the other pieces are decent. You've at least got like a squad that could maybe be top 20. I don't know who you're going to replace him with, but you've got a couple of players who were still good. It's just, he's just the most obvious like mismatch where he's just too good for his team. It's very rare you ever say that. Like, even when Ziwu in Vitality back in the day was just hard carrying and everyone else was like bad stats, he had veteran players around him, though. It wasn't just people who'd throw the trash. This team, it's like they don't have enough quality pieces to be a good team, and then Rops is just way better overall than everyone else. Like, someone like Frozen, I think a year or two from now could be in that spot if he keeps developing. Who the fuck knows with BMAS? I've heard too many things conflicting either way with that guy. But I think, the rest of the team, like, they're not really much of anything once he leaves, but it's just logical for everyone. It just has to happen at this point. Like, what would the point in staying be?
Yeah, I mean, put it this way: like, I was watching around in DreamHack, which just summed it up for me. Like, all of his team had all fucked off and died and just done like really stupid things. Acor just whiffed a shot and got banged out by a rifler. Like, it was a microcosm round of all of the problems with Mouse. And basically, Rops was like the last one left alive, and he'd been the last one left alive in the previous 2 rounds. And all the chat are basically spamming like, "Lol, Rops beta, I am Rops, I'm a beta, see you at the bomb site a little later," with like emojis between it or whatever, because Twitch chat is mega intelligent. And then he just clutched 1v4, and it was a crucial round. It was like when the game was like 12-12 on Dust 2, and he just made a 1v4 fucking clutch, right? And so it's like, He can turn it on whenever he wants. Like, Rops is just so good. It's just he must be so fucking out of sorts and so jaded because he can remember the mouse sports that was viable. You know, he can remember the one that they went to tournaments, they got upset, and they upset teams and they had deep runs and all that stuff. It's just those days are over. You know, they are now just an also ran. And unfortunately, he's good enough to be on a top 10 team in the world easily. So yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping they sell him, and I don't know where he would go. Frankly, I don't know where a good fit would be for him. But
we say that's a Roster Mini episode.
Yeah, FaZe, shall we?
Yes, do it.
Listen, I'm not going to pull any punches with FaZe. I think this underlines the failure it's been. The fact that they didn't get to the arena. I think it pretty much sums up everything I've been saying about them for a while now. I know, obviously, in the challenges stage, they look good. They had that real good, performance against VP. But remember, they were only at the major. This is why I always thought they were a paper tiger coming into the major. They were only at the major because, what was it? It was like Fiend. After they lost to Fiend, they someone else had to beat OG or something,
basically,
wasn't it?
What had to happen was OG and Big had to go out at a certain phase of the tournament. While G2 won a load of games that were the fill games, and then also all the mini underdogs, I think it was Acceptance, had to lose, and this all happened. About 4 or 5 different things happened to allow them to come to the major. Yeah. So basically, in no way did they actually get themselves
it was Nico. It was Nico coming back to do Carrigan a favour, ironically.
Yes.
So I mean, keep in mind they finished 9th at the last RMR before the major and literally got there by the good graces of G2. And then, okay, they look all right in the challenges stage. Whatever. You beat Spirit Ents and VP. All right. They get given the gift of evil geniuses at the start. There's a free best of one. They got absolutely shit on by G2. Absolutely shit on by Copenhagen Flames. Then they get Team Liquid. Listen, all the European teams that were given NA teams at this event were just just loving it totally. And then obviously the VP loss is insane. It's such a crazy loss on Ancient.
Oh, they almost 2-0'd the series. Yeah, they were in great position.
Yeah, it is such a crazy loss on Ancient, a map they've invested all of this time on.
And that was the map, if people don't remember. That was a punish pick, because at the time, VP were 0-4 in the last 3 months on the map. It's not a map they were playing. But as you saw, to be fair, later on, they also did fucking miracle a game against, I think it was in the playoffs they beat. Fucking hell. Who did they even play in the first round of the playoff? Didn't they win it against Heroic or something mental? Yeah, something like that. So anyway, basically, that's true. VP's a magical team. But yeah, that should have been 2-0 all day long if FaZe were who they thought they were.
Yeah, and so, them, and I know, obviously we weren't getting all of the wicked moments because PGL production was fucking shite, and we didn't get a losers interview or anything like that, and we were having to rely on HLTV and other on-site media to sort of capture video footage of, all the stuff that was happening. But, Carrigan was obviously clearly upset, and I was, saying to you, I don't even remember if we said this on the show. I think we did. I think we did say it on air. It's all a fucking blur, obviously. But, I think we said, shed all your fucking tears, mate. At the end of the day, you've had everything you want. You said you wanted a year with the team. You got the best part of a year. You've got the roster you want. You brought Olaf Meister back because you believe he's good enough to play on this team. And that you can go to events and you can win with that lineup. That's what you believe, right? And you weren't good enough. And you hadn't been good enough, by the way. You dragged the fucking FaZe name through the mud for months, just going, well, it's just online CS. Yeah, the only CS we have for the foreseeable. I guess it's okay for you to phone it in, right? So they do that. They have 1 or 2 flashes where you go, okay, this FaZe could be good. That roster should be I don't know with Olaf on it, but that core 4 should be way better than it actually is. There is no getting away from it. And also, I just want to say, Brokey, he he was legit the best player on the fucking squad, the one with the least experience, the one with the least reputation. He actually played like he gave a shit every game, you know, and when you think about how he doesn't get his stickers, you know, doesn't get that financial boon that guys like Twists and Olaf and Carrigan and Rain will never have to worry about, I feel massively sorry for him. I feel like all his teammates really let him down badly. And you know, he's the inexperienced player. You shouldn't be saying the rookie's the guy that has to drag you across the line in a major. Nah, fuck FaZe. Like, I'm so done with it, mate. Like, they got everything all their own way and completely flopped for me. I don't know if you feel that strongly about it.
Listen, there is one piece of context that I'll add, which is if you ever talk to Yanko, I'm sure he's probably said this in your interview, he implied it in mine. FaZe as an org supposedly are one of the fucking slowest of all time to actually make a roster move. Even if it's like the player agrees, the team wants him, the other teams agrees to sell him. Like, just sort of getting the fucking paperwork done sounds like it takes forever in this team. Sounds like a bureaucratic nightmare, or that they just don't care enough about esports and they sort of have to go, oh yeah, right, sorry, we do have a team. Yeah, my bad. I was doing some streaming shit and scamming some kids on crypto, right? But this is the ridiculous part to me. It's like, I agree. My problem with FaZe goes like this. People are still talking like Olaf Meister came back 3 weeks ago as a mate to help them out of a bad... He didn't! This guy, not only, by the way, only had something like 3 or 4 months off when Carrigan joined and they had Cold Zera, but also, let's add this in the mix, he's been in the team again since June. Guys, we're almost at Christmas. Like, we're in November now. Like, the idea that you can be in the team that many months. Sorry, when you're in the team that many months and you play and you accept an enormous salary and someone like Carrigan doesn't say it, replace this guy with someone else, you're all agreeing that you're going to, in good faith, act like this guy is good enough to be in FaZe and that FaZe can be what FaZe should be, which is a world contender team. Now, I don't believe if you sat any of these players down and you put the fucking truth serum in them and we could sort of interrogate them before the event, I don't think any of them really thought that. You know, like, I think people like Carrigan, for example, went in with just like naive optimism. Let's hope it works out. Let's hope because it's LAN, I turn everything around. But I don't really believe they actually thought this was a real team and that they were going to do real damage. And also, I'll add this in as well. We've got to stop just treating people like royalty in CS. So I'll give you an example. Rain had a couple of really good games in this tournament. Still isn't one of the best players in the world. Can we stop pretending like this is 4 years ago now? So the real problem with that team is, if you want to talk, take the nameplates off and just look at the players in the server. I agree. They've got Brokey, who's actually, if anything, overperformed. His first major, the guy was playing really well. Twist at times in games is amazing. Sometimes he's just average. Beyond that, what have you got in the team? Like, yeah, you've got Carrigan, IGL. E-teams do a pretty good job. I don't think he's got the pieces to do it. It's like being an old school quarterback who knows all the throws and you have one wide receiver. And even then, that guy's question, what are you going to do all day? Like, so I think the problem with this team is, if I actually, again, it's like the Astralis thing. If I view it how I view it cynically in the industry, it makes perfect sense they didn't make top 8. They never should have been top 8. I think they even kind of like ran a fucking miracle run in the first phase. So Carrigan just was like the top fragging player and they just wheezed through like 3-0 too easy. So to me, they overperformed if anything. But I agree. If you look at who a FaZe is supposed to be, the choices they made, we didn't make the choices for them, mate. We can't be blamed. They have to take responsibility. I think this is mega underwhelming. It's like, what did you throw a whole year away of the team for? Like, what is this shit? Especially because they're not a team that was ever like not paying money or couldn't have bought people. There's people want to join FaZe Clan.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I still think this lineup, actually, let's say you take Olaf out and you put somebody else in, almost anybody else that is a FaZe caliber player, and I think they can do something. I think the problem is they're huffing their own fucking hopium all the fucking time, mate. Carrigan just seemed to think magically it was all going to click at LAN because, honestly, every team he's played on, it has been that way, you know, but this was very different. Olaf Meister was a shadow of himself still. Like, I never understood the vibe in bringing him back. Brokey, who actually wasn't a problem, is still a rookie player. Twists is idiosyncratic at the best of times, and Rain is so up and down, you just don't know which version of him's going to turn up. Either the guy who literally carries you through a game, or a guy who's kind of anonymous and just does what you would expect any other player to do. So I don't know. This entire lineup, for me, that it's just been hindered by the Olaf question. I've got no problem even keeping Rain around, frankly. I have no issue with that. It's the Olaf question. He's been in and out the team. He's been good. One tournament, as in top tier, like, had, you know, roll back the years and you go, oh, shit, Olaf's back. But Olaf can never be back. 2015 Olaf can never come back. He can never have that level of sustained excellence. And obviously, next event, he's one of the lowest performers. You can't have a player in a team like that and expect to be able to sort of reasonably guess, where you're going to finish. So, yeah, I was mega disappointed for FaZe, but they've only got themselves to blame. Now, you contrast that with the other team who didn't get to play in the stadium. Well, they did in the doomed show match where you just got absolutely fucked over. Copenhagen Flames. Now, Copenhagen Flames, we said coming in, they're online. Right? Watch out for Copenhagen Flames. Will they do it in a LAN environment? Then they got the benefit of playing their first 3 games in the Challenger stage from essentially their hotel, the practice room. And then we were like, yeah, well, what are they going to do when they get to the studio? And then, to be fair, they did win some games, but unfortunately, they did falter at the last hurdle. But they made a fan out of me in the end. I mean, keep in mind, they lost to G2. They beat FaZe, beat EG, took a map off Heroic, took a map off NIP, 2 very tough opponents, 2 very tenured opponents, and they were very unlucky to narrowly miss out. I mean, the NIP game, by the way, couldn't have been closer.
Oh, mate, they're the only team in that matchup that could have won all 3 of the maps. Like, they were almost 2-0 in it. The comeback they were making on fucking H, it was epic. It was amazing shit, by the way. Not like their favourite map or anything. I actually thought they played better than NIP as a team. It's just NIP had a couple of individuals, like Hampus, for example, even Linus at the end, who just made a couple of big plays and won the game for them. Like, I actually thought, they might be...
It's outrageous when you think about it, that it was Linus that made the clutches.
It shows how dog shit Nip ended up being, that's what it takes to put you over the top against basically absolute nobodies at the major. Like, again, NIP's a team we'll talk about in a minute, I'm sure, but this is a team that was overwhelming. So my problem with this squad is this. I started out being a massive skeptic of Flames for the reasons you're saying. Like, they never had actually properly gone to a LAN. They never actually left their fucking hotel rooms. But once you saw them play that match, for example, on the stage, I mean, I say stage, like a tournament area, it was way more legit circumstances, and they basically played a similar game, and they were actually quite an impressive squad. Now, I will say, unfortunately, I am not a guy who believes in movie storylines, so I don't go and after this tournament they'll be like, sorry guys, they probably were a flash in the pan. It's one of those like great one-off tournament stories, you get them every few years. The problem is though, like, I do think they actually would have been an interesting team if they could have made it to the playoffs, and I'd love to see what they would have done in that first round matchup.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way, it was literally just Linus basically had his best performance since joining NIP. I mean, that's pretty much all it boils down to. That was the degree by which Copenhagen Flames didn't get to go. But, moving forward, I think you got to respect them as, like, very legit opponents. I mean, Roy is the guy everyone was talking about. Obviously, he plays, like, entry, takes point. So, obviously, that's very exciting. Also, he's been in the Mad Lions lineup in the past. But at 27, just coming out of nowhere, doing a Jax. Maybe 27 is the new fucking 21, mate. What do I know? But, but also, the player that stood out was that Nikodos. Remember, this is a guy who's the only lands he'd been to prior to this are the type you take your own computer to. Like, nothing legit, nothing high level. And he played with, like, balls. That's basically what Copenhagen Flames did to win me over.
Yes.
But as I said, it's easy to play with balls online. It's easy to take those wide peaks online. It's easy to do the drive-bys online. When at LAN, the game handles differently and the pressure is way more intense. Didn't change the way Copenhagen Flames play the game at all. Even that Jabby guy, I know you love him. I sent you a picture of him just today because I know how much you love him and miss him. Even that Jabby guy he went nuclear in the NIP game out of fucking nowhere. Yeah, so, I mean, I felt mega sorry that Copenhagen Flames didn't make it to the top 8. But, I mean, here's the thing. Their performance, I mean, their org couldn't have been more clear. They were, but they are for sale. They're for sale, everyone. They are for sale. We are willing to sell. And, you're only talking, when you think about buyouts for players like Rops, you're talking $750,000 probably to get this entire roster. It's got to be worth a punt for someone. And I'm pretty sure the deal's been done, so...
Yeah, to me, the reason you make that deal as well is that's just a whole team you get to buy, a coherent team, and then you can add a player. You can buy someone out and add one player, make them good.
Yeah, totally. Your dark horse pick, Virtus Pro. Obviously did get into the stadium and then obviously lost at the first hurdle in a very close series against Heroic. Yeah, it was a banger. Now we've already made one controversial statement today when I said Elige is the problem. Here you go, mate. I know you'll run with this one. Jim is the problem.
I would say if I had to rank the problems in Virtus Pro, he'd be definitely near the top of the list, if not number one. And I've always thought part of the issue they had in their team, and I knew this would happen on LAN, by the way, is it's not that Yakinda would be bad online. It's just nobody could do what he was doing online in, let's say, like the spring of this year or whatever, when they were like at their peak. Like nobody would ever post impact stats and these crazy entries like he did there. Like you'd have to be the best player in the world.
He had a pretty good go at this event, in my opinion. He was almost top fragging.
But there's the problem. If you take anything away from that, it just makes James' weaknesses become more apparent in the team. And I did think especially, look, for other matches in the tournament, he sometimes showed me wrong and did a great game. The way he ended this tournament was some bitch-made shit. Like, he actually just straight up, it just like, what you could see for real was him philosophically reaching decision points where he just said, no, give me everything as usual. And that's the problem. Like, people love to talk about selfish star players. I like selfish star players that go, give me the gun, and then they go and kill everyone in the game. Not go, give me the gun, then just hide around the corner. Like, how's that good? That's doubly selfish. Like, in this scenario, I even think Jim, by the way, I've said this before, if someone else piloted his brain, his skills are clearly very good with the AWP. Like, he could actually be one of the best AWPers in the world. He could be like the 5th best AWPer in the game or something. But I feel like his style, it only works against certain opponents in a certain way. He needs teammates clearly to facilitate him to make it work. And I think he just pushes it too far. He sort of doesn't have any wiggle room in his game, and so I do think he's a bit selfish, unfortunately. I think the rest of the team, like, he had some good games, but I think the rest of the team could have gone further in this tournament if he just tamed it, like rein it in a little bit.
Well, I mean, the statistics bear it out, right? He was, I think, Virtus Pro's worst performing player across 12 maps. He didn't have a 1 rating. He had 0.97. He was barely positive on kills. You know, this is your AWPer. And if you go and look at him, by the way, if you look at his statistics coming into this, if you look at him across the whole of the year, as we did when PGL could provide statistics, of course, you know, you see he's like a top 20 player. He's been insane in the online era.
Yes.
But he played like a pussy here. Like, I mean, real talk. Like, I think even Blair said that, like, about him. Like, you can't do that in that situation. When a game is close, especially on maps like Inferno, where it's always going to be close, what you have to do when you're the AWPer, you know, you can, if there is that 1v2 and you've got the drop on them and maybe the bomb's gone down and you've got time, that is where you go and make a play. Would Simple save in that situation? Would he fuck? Would he fuck? He would go and he would win the round. Right? And by the way, also, if you lose the round, what's the worst thing that happens? Let's stop pretending if you don't have an AWP the next round, it's some sort of catastrophic thing. Like, let's stop pretending like pistols are bad at the moment. Like, the Tech 9's back, baby. You've got that. Deagles are still pretty OP. So, you know, at the end of the day, like, I was super disappointed. Like, Jim, every time there were moments where you're like, go on, the sleeper can awaken, go do it. Nah, he wanted to just save and have the AWP the next round, and then would promptly go for a peek and die anyway, making you think, well, why did you even bother saving it? Because you know, you've put your team in a 4v5 at the start of the round. You know, for me, unfortunately, James was one of the biggest disappointments at this LAN. Him and Rez were the two ones that, like, basically broke my brain with how poor they were. In terms of disparity.
His team was almost in the semis despite all this. Like, imagine if he'd actually turned up like he did like at the previous major, Stalin de Berlin, where he was one of the better players. Like, mate, they could have done real damage. They could have been in the final maybe,
Yeah. I know, but I'll also add as well, what makes it worse is the fact that he is a fucking IGL. So here's the problem. Imagine if you had another IGL who just went, well, you fucking go for it. Can't do that. James the IGL. Guys, I will be safe. You will be dropping for me. And fucking come on, man. This is ridiculous. Like, you cannot have it all. Like, this is a recurring theme, but it's just good to know for Counterstrike in general. Like, you cannot have everything your own way all of the time. No team can function like that. And VP, honestly, with the way James was playing and the decisions he was making, I think top 8's fucking legit as fuck, frankly.
Oh, mate, I'll give you an example. So there was a round that I pointed out on the broadcast where basically they were on CT side on Inferno, and basically what happened was everyone had like I think 2 or 3K on VP, but then Yekindar had 7K, right? So Jim just got him the AWP thrown to him, an AWP bought essentially like almost glass cannon, and everyone else just like I think just force fought around it to like pistols and armor or something, right? In the current game, it's 2,900 for a fucking M4A1S. One of the best possible guns right now. CT side, it's amazing on, by the way. That could have been 2 rifles. You could even either like stack them on one site and go for a play. You could put one on each site. That could be a gun in Yakinda's hand, in Flit's hand.
Yeah, no, right?
That's egregious because in that
scenario,
yeah, when you get that up, you better be planning on doing something amazing. Like you better have some like mad peak you're gonna go for, like because essentially, like I'm looking at that, just going, that could be 2 guns to other people, mate.
Yeah, and also I'm sure I saw him go glass cannon a number of times over the course of this tournament, which, by the way, I really fucking hate. I really despise that. If you're forcing up for a glass cannon up, first of all that tells me is you've got no rifle game. Like, fuck you. I hate AWPers with no plan B. Guardian had a plan B. Pistols usually, sure, but, or a scout, and they can be just as lethal. If you have to have the big green gun or you contribute absolutely nothing, go get JDM back. Fuck it. It's ridiculous. So yeah, Jim mega disappointed me this event. And like I was like you, I thought VP were a good legit dark horse pick, but that was ridiculous. We can talk about NIP because I mentioned Rez. I legit thought they could make it to the final. I know you think I'm mentally ill.
The bracket was definitely one of the better ones you could ever get. Like on paper, when everyone saw that bracket, they were like, wait a minute, aren't like most of the best teams in the top half?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the problem you had was like for me, like I don't know if it would have gone different had they been able to evade essentially Resident Evil Nemesis in the form of Na'Vi and Gambit in best of threes, because. Look, best will in the world, what had to happen, essentially, in my mind, for NIP to win the major was basically G2 had to take out one of Gambit and Na'Vi, and NIP basically only had to play one, preferably swerving them until they got to the final. The fact they had to play Na'Vi and Gambit, that put them in a must-win position going up against Copenhagen Flames, was just it was savage, and basically that's what leads them to play in G2, and that was another opponent, realistically, they probably had to miss, especially the way Nico was playing. Now,
you could argue they lost to the 3 best teams in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, listen, but on one hand, you can look at it that way, but on the other hand, people aren't going to look at it that way, because how they're going to look at it is just you finish 5th to 8th, as the home team in Stockholm. So, I mean, look, let's be real. Linus, even though he was responsible in the Copenhagen Flames game for getting him there, he can't stay on this team. They've got to be honest about how he is not good enough. And also, I'm going to say this. Rez needs to fucking have his next LAN, he better turn up, or he's going to get called an onliner. Think about how fucking important he's been to this team, looking as good as they did, winning the RMR, just in the build-up, all of it. Him and Device were basically, and obviously to a lesser extent Hampus, who is a really good frag in IGL, they were dragging him through this motherfucking, these tournaments. And Rez was like absolutely popping off in all of these online competitions, right? And basically, nah. He was just non-existent. He was a non-entity at the major. He might even be in the bottom 10 players at the event, or bottom 15.
I could easily believe it. He was just invisible. Like, it wasn't even that he was like making bad misplays and flowing. I never saw him in the server. It feels like he wasn't playing the matches. No, I also got the vibe as well. This is why if I'm Device, I would be very careful about my next career moves, because when I look at this team, I also got the vibe. You could actually tell just from how Device was playing whether he thought the team was in good form or not. Like at this major, he was just lackluster as fuck. It looked like, it wasn't literally, but it looked like he was falling in the performance. Like, I missed that shot, whatever, I'll go for this next one. Like, a few months ago, like you're talking about the RMR, he was rolling because actually the team was in their best possible form. So when they were in great form, he was the old player, you remember, one of the best players in the world. But I don't think that Device even came to the major, mate. He just looked okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing, right? Like, I mean, one of the things that has to happen if Nip are going to, I haven't got as much of a beef with Plopsky as other people on the internet do, because I understand, even though I did see some HLTV thread during the major, Richard Lewis doesn't even follow the game. Yeah, of course I don't. Yeah, that's why I can do 45-minute fucking fill segments, like when, off the top of the dome. Yeah, no problem. But I saw an HLTV thread going, Plopsky's not even a support player in Nip. You mustn't have watched Nip play recently, because Plopsky is having to do that shit because you can't rely on I know LNZ's a more supportive player, but that's almost like he's the player that gets labelled support to cover the deficiency.
Yes.
Plopsky's actually the guy who is doing actual support work you would expect from a support player. Go watch the demos. I don't give a fuck. Anyone that thinks Plopsky isn't doing a more supportive role now to what he was doing prior to it hasn't followed Nip. And so, listen, when you get told we have signed a star player and we are going to play this way, and we have a youngster in the team who we need to train, you now do this. I'm never angry at players like that. It's the reason why I never flamed Sanji when statistically he was terrible. Statistically he was terrible because you have motherfucking James going, give me a gun. You play with a pistol this round. Plopsky's having to do so much that's out of his comfort zone. LNZ's the big problem. You had ZTR, who clearly had a brain, clearly understood the game, so much so, Hampus is on record as saying he was going to make calls in the mid-round to help the team. So they went all in on that, and then for reasons I don't understand, he gets bombed back to the fucking Nip Academy team. I don't get it. And LNZ looks worse. Nip looked better with ZTR up until the final RMR before this major. And Device was looking good. Yeah, but also, as I said, the problem you've got is Device is your big star, he's your big investment. So if you are going to drag two supportive players, i.e. one player who's just not cut out for this level and one player who's had to completely change his role, you need Device to pop off. And he didn't pop off at the major. He didn't look like a Nico. He didn't look like a Simple. He didn't look like a star player in that sense. He looked like a very good AWPer, but not a world star player. So I agree with you in that sense. He was a little bit disappointing. But I think the next iteration of Nip is the real Nip.
It has to be now. They've wasted so much time, mate. Remember, he joined in like May. People, again, this is the problem with the online era. Just like everyone joked about how, like, it's like you lost a year because of all the online shit and all the restrictions and stuff. It feels like that in CSGO. People are still treating teams like moves that were made months ago were made a week before the event or something. Like, this team has had plenty of time to get their shit together. So to me, it's on NIP, the org now. You have to spend money and buy players. Like, it isn't good enough to go, I found another Swedish guy might be able to... No, that's not good enough. You already had your chance for that. You had your 6 months that you dicked around with worthless players that weren't going to make it. Now they have to be real players that are good and they hit the ground running immediately.
So the other team I'll talk about that finished at the same stage, because I'll just skip over Furia. I think considering...
What should talk about with that one?
Yeah, well, I think considering they had drop on the lineup, I think they did it. I think it was
as well as you could expect.
It's historic for them. First time at a major they've made it to the top 8. Absolute credit to them, but realistically, probably slightly overperformed. But so. Yeah. But the reason I want to talk about Vitality is just through the lens of the big ZWoo, equation. By the way, as well, I saw loads of threads going, why does Richard call him ZWoo? He is not Chinese. That's not his name. That's literally how every French person I have spoke to pronounces it. ZWoo himself has never said ZywOo or ZWoo, right? But every French player I've talked to says ZWoo. So whatever. Anyway, for me, in terms of the great question about, are we looking at a future GOAT or whatever, I have to say, the fact he wasn't able to put the team on his back, is a little bit concerning. But I thought he did well enough. The big problem with Vitality, obviously, was at the other end. All the impact ZWoo had was negated by how shit Kyojin was.
Of course. Yes.
Kyojin, this might be one of the all-time awful performances.
By the way, shout out to Yanko, because it's not that often I get to enjoy someone else's joke on the desk, right? But Yanko did get me with a good one. Where I said Kyojin, probably the worst player to ever play at a major. And then Yanko had that joke where he said, you take one picture with Zeus and it's all forgotten. So like that, by the way, that's straight fire. That is actually fire.
Yeah, I mean, listen, people don't realise because they listen to Yanko's like very, dry voice and stuff, and they don't pick up on. He's got a great sense of humour,
Yeah, he does.
But anyway, I mean, so what are you left with in terms of thinking about Zoo? Because I know as well there was another sort of mini drama where you'd said, listen, he's been farming onliners. While we've been in the online era, and he's not a patch on Simple and this sort of thing, and people seem to take an objection to that, even though I don't know how anyone can dispute that Simple is the better player, frankly.
They weren't even disputing it. What they did was pure cognitive dissonance. So essentially what I said was, like, Ziwu's been farming onliners for the last, year or so, and Goats prove it on LAN, and that, he's nowhere close to Simple, something like that. That was the gist of it, right? Yeah. Now, what they did, Richard, is go, no, but in 2019 he was on LAN. Well, what does that have to do with what I just said about online? By the way, everyone's been farming people online, so let's just put that in the context to understand why that sentence would make sense, because hasn't Simple been playing online, which is what everyone else told me as well. Yeah, Simple also played the whole of his career before that, you fucking moron, and is the best player to ever play the majors. Like, the point is pretty simple. The clue to what I say, right, is in the words I choose to use. If you look at the words, you'll find everything from there. If you take the words out of there and change what I said, it won't be anything like what I said, so it won't really be a worthwhile argument to have at that point. So basically, the gist of what I was saying is, as you saw in this tournament, like, when in the two best of ones, Zero basically didn't turn up, and the team was shit, and they were down 0-2, and they were about to go out of the major. Now remember, this is only the third major he was playing his entire career, right? We can't just go, oh, the online era, we have to count the results there, but majors don't count if you're a star player and it's only your third one. What are you talking about? So I have to count an online fucking IEM Beijing Haidan event played in Europe from your bedroom, but not the World Championship on LAN. Like, this beggars belief, you fanboys, that you're actually wilding out of control now, mate. So my problem is this. By the way, he wasn't turning up at that point. Now, what's cool is he literally at that moment did flip the switch, and everyone's heard this story about, like, Apex apparently told him, like, if you don't basically carry it, we're fucking out of this tournament. And he did.
He was performing at that point, no doubt about it.
From then on, he was carrying. I will say, in the series against Na'Vi, he was just all right. He had a few rounds that were good. He wasn't superstar level. But that is something. This is what people don't understand, is if we want to go and we want to forget Ziwu, then he's already doing a great job in his career, isn't he? Look at what a fantastic first couple of years he's had. It's only his third major. He's in the round of 8 again. It's all great. Problem is, we're not doing that. People who themselves are Ziwu fans are putting him, they're putting him there, Richard. I'm not. They're putting him next to the greatest player ever, who, by the way, suck my nuts, just posted the greatest ever rating at a major ever while winning it without losing a single map and getting the MVP. Suck my fucking nuts, because that's who you're comparing your favourite player to. By the way, you're an idiot to do it. That would be like when Michael Jordan was in the NBA and Kobe Bryant first came in. If the Kobe fans were like, nah, he's already as good as Michael Jordan, you'd be a moron to do that. Like, why would you ever do that to your favourite player? What you do is you go, my player's also really good early in his career, and I hope one day he can match the trajectory and be compared to him at the end. By the way, it's usually what the players themselves even say. The cool players tend to say, and not that I think I'm better, I just want to be in the conversation. That's like the PR friendly way to say it. Yeah. So the problem is, Ziwu is in the conversation for greatest player ever. It's just that things like this is why he gets discounted immediately, and why, by the way, it ain't even Simple Ziwu. After Simple, we go to people like Nico, Get Right, like Kenny S. These are the players we go to next, but we ain't Ziwu yet. So if you want to look at Ziwu's career, these are important milestones. And so I thought in generally he turned it around enough. His team definitely isn't good enough for him, by the way. He doesn't have the team that Simple does. Obviously, that goes without saying. But I'll give you a contrast. Look at the team that Ziwu has, and then look at the team that Nico had. Nico was fucking killing it no matter what was happening. And by the way, I'll tell you right now, people like Amanek and Jax aren't going to have long careers in CS. People like fucking Shocks could still be around. It could be in another squad elsewhere. So I actually think people gave him a little bit too much of a pass. But I also think it wasn't that terrible if you look at the context of how young his career is.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think overall as well, like, in sort of in the build-up to the major, I think actually when we start getting to talking about who the best two players of the year have been, I mean, maybe this is like recency bias, but I almost want to say I think Nico might have squeaked in ahead of Ziwu.
For sure, especially when you add in, people are going to remember the major because it was a massive LAN major. Of course, I think that's a legit shout. Yeah, especially now the Gambit players sort of fell apart at the end. No, I think it's probably, some of it's, listen, I wouldn't say it's recency bias. I'd just say that his best results are in the last 3 to 6 months, aren't they?
Yeah, but I mean, like, as we'll get to, now, Shiro, fuck Gambit at this event. Fuck him. They deserve to be called onliners. Like, I'm so sick of people, but they finished third to fourth at the major. Results matter, context matters, history matters. So fucking, we'll segue into that. By the way, Ziwu was third-ranked player at the event after the final, just behind Nico and Simple. Yeah, but obviously then it just goes electronic bit, you know. Of course. And Frozen was up there too. God bless him. So anyway, let's talk about Gambit here. Got third to fourth. I mean, listen, their results, their run, it's garbage. It is actual garbage that this team that was literally all conquering for the first 6 months of the year before Na'Vi finally figured out how to make it all click. Right. Who did they beat at this major? Ents in a best of one. Then they lose to Entropic. They nearly lost to Virtus Pro. Had to rely on fucking Hobbit dropping 39 kills in regulation to win 16-14 on Vertigo, a map, by the way, which up until the Entropic loss, they'd won 33 out of their last 35 on. Then, the NIP game, where they won, like, fair enough. NIP didn't really show up in that one. Their Inferno pick certainly wasn't legit. But NIP were a paper tiger, as we found out. Then they get Furia as the first stadium game. They should be beating that. And they nearly took it to a third map.
Yes.
They nearly lost on Inferno. Against Furia, Gambit we're talking about. And so obviously you go, okay, well, now we get the match we all wanted. Man, we hyped up Gambit Na'Vi something ridiculous because it should be the clash of the titans it was for all of the year. LAN shouldn't change anything about this. Well, it turns out it definitely did. I have never been more embarrassed for a top tier team. Never. Never. Because let me tell you, the only player who actually looked like a legit top-tier player well, actually, I suppose Inters as well to a little degree, but it was Hobbit the entire time. It was Hobbit the entire time. Shiro went missing, Axile went missing, and fair enough, like Nafani, I don't know what else he can do except call. But as I said, Nafani, he's the one who lit the fucking torch paper on the fucking implosion to begin with. He's the one going, whether it is online or at big LANs in stadiums, we will not feel the pressure and play the same. You don't know that. You never know that. You have no frame of reference on that. You've never done it. They got absolutely schooled by Na'Vi. And when you consider that it was Gambit who essentially had Na'Vi's number to such a degree, they're the one who gave Blade the existential crisis. This is a fucking humiliation. This is one of the weakest third to fourth place finished runs at any major in history. It is, yeah, it's absolutely whack as fuck. And anyone that thinks Gambit gave a good account of themselves here at this major didn't watch the games. The end.
Because I know what they'll get to do, sadly, is they'll get to just fucking waltz through on the fact that, but it's Na'Vi. Look, Na'Vi never lost a map. Nobody could have beaten Na'Vi. First of all, G2 almost did beat Na'Vi and almost did beat them on a map. In a way, Gambit never came close to in their series. And the worst part about it is this. I agree. If Na'Vi players frag like that, you probably lose the series, but you could have given a way better account. In fact, the team tailor-made to counter Na'Vi was Gambit, because the great thing about Gambit is everyone normally fits their role online. They have three star players who have each won multiple MVPs this year online. If you have 3-star players, the logic goes, one of them can even have an off series. You got 2-star players. They had 1-star player in that series, and it was Hobbit. Shiro just fell apart, who was posting bonkers stats before that, and Axel never turned up to the whole tournament. Go look it up now. That was the worst statistical performance Axel has had in 2021. This was a guy winning MVPs as an entry player. So if my star passive AWPer and my star fucking entry don't turn up at all to a series, yeah, I'm not going to beat a team posting historically bonkers fragging numbers. Like, it makes sense, but I agree. The problem is, as much as you want to load up the Na'Vi side of it and make it like they're unbeatable, you could at least have pushed them, though, as G2 did. And by the way, did G2 do it with their own?
5 kills on Mirage.
There you go. Exactly. And by the way, if you look at his style of play, He's definitely not playing super aggressively in a way that like, oh, that makes sense. You know, you got to take a punch to get one. Like, this is another passive player. That's why I made that comment that people might think is harsh. But I really wonder who Shiro is, because I've already seen him in this unit. Even when in the past lineup before they had Hobbit, it was still the same players he was playing with. So I want to see if I take this guy and I drop him in Entropic tomorrow, or I go put him in Virtus Pro, would he just be like Jim? Would he just be Mega Beta? Would he just play too selfishly? Because again, the problem in the modern day in Counter-Strike, and this is why, by the way, just go ask my boy Device. Device has won all the MVPs in fucking history, it feels like. But nobody will ever put him in that conversation of, are you actually as good as Simple? Because the eye test just tells you no, of course not. Like, this is the problem if you want to be someone like Shiro, is you can hit all the 7 out of 10 degree of difficulty AWP shots you want, and I'll say you're one of the best AWPers. But if you want me to say you're one of the best players in the world, you have to be able to actually win the game for me. You have to go, right, this is in this particular server, mate. I don't care that you're Nico or you're fucking Rops or whoever. I'm the best player here, and I have to win the game for my team, so I take over. This guy doesn't do that. If the team's doing well, he rides with them, and he can be the best performer, and he can look like the best player on the team. But where are you when the team goes to shit? Because I thought in that semi-final he was whack as well, mate.
Yeah. Oh, he was. He was. Heroic. Obviously, they were the other essentially semi-finalists, third to fourth finish. They had a great series against G2, another one of the really good series here at this major. And I've got to say, listen, a deep run when everyone was willing them to fail. I didn't know how the crowd was going to react to them. My assumption was that, especially in Stockholm, they would get booed, but actually there was a lot of Danish people made the trip. They had a lot of support.
And exists as their coach as well, remember?
Yeah, exactly. And also, by the way, as I said on the drama show that we recorded, you know, I wanted to make a point of going the entire major without saying Hunden's name. Fuck that guy. He doesn't get to be talked about on the biggest stage ever again. That cheating piece of shit. So yeah, it was amazing that Exist sort of stepped in. And listen, I think he actually definitely contributed to this run that they had. They had some pretty good vetoes. I even joked about it on the broadcast. These are some of the best vetoes Exist has ever been a part of, because he famously made it difficult for himself. So, you know, I like put it this way: in the series they lost to G2, which was mega close and obviously came down to overtime on the decider. It's sad because Cadian was absent in that series. But what I will say is, I don't know if this team needs Cadian to be on to be good in a way traditional teams do, because the things that emerged for me at this event were that, like, finally Refresh is going to get the respect he deserves because he had like loads of wicked clutch moments and highlight kills. Down emerged as essentially that he's gone from being the promising youngster to the star within the breadth of this tournament for me. And, you know, guys like Shush and Tezes that people never, ever talk about, all at various points had monster maps. And in the case of the G2, Shush was the guy who had the monster series. Now, yeah, as I said, Cadian goes missing in that series. I don't know how much of an impact it would have had, because unfortunately, they ran into a fucking god tier Nico. So I don't know if they would ever have had the tools to have beaten this G2. But the fact they got as far as they did, it gives a great account of themselves. And they've won over hearts and minds, Duncan. You know, they've actually turned the corner. Yeah, they can thank us. We helped by saying, look at them celebrating, and that too much for underachievement. How dare you say no one should celebrate ever? Heroic are my heroes. Fuck you too. So they can thank us for that. But also, I mean, the way they played, the way they approached the games, the map pools, they were super competitive. Could have easily been in the final if it weren't for Nico, frankly.
I thought generally what was cool as well about this one is they basically the ones who flirted with the onliner thing so early on, because in the first phase they were losing to Copenhagen Flames in the best of 3, Entropic in the best of 3. These are supposed to be like also Rands, teams that are not going to make an impact on the major. So yeah, when they made it through that phase, I thought, fucking hell, if it's going to be that tight early on, like what are you going to do later on? But what's cool is once they made it fairly comfortably through the new Legend stage and they got to the playoffs, listen, VP was just a very very hard team for almost any team to play. A lot of teams could get drawn into the deep waters of them. I don't blame them for that. And they did win, which was almost like a character building series. I also thought, like, mate, as you say, if Nico's even 10% worse, which would still, by the way, be like second or third best player at the tournament, they win that series. They're in the final. Like that comeback on the third map was incredible. That really was the sort of shit that you don't. By the way, that's the sort of shit Gambit wasn't doing with their players that haven't got much experience. They were showing some heroic series. And as you say, if you want to go beyond just Stown, who obviously had like amazing stats, some of them, mate, I guarantee you could get some of them, because some of them are sound enough they'd admit it. Some of those G2 players will probably tell you that's just gotta give them fucking nightmares with the entries he was getting. He was just getting opening kills all over the map. And it's like, fucking hell, now we're on the back foot again and in CT side of Inferno. So I thought they gave a very good account of themselves. Like, in contrast to Gambit, who I agree, if anything, almost like an easy path to get there. This team actually could have gone much further. Like, if the bracket was different, I'd love to see how it'd be. I'd love to have seen them play Gambit. I think they would have beaten Gambit.
Yeah, oh, no doubt for me. Put it this way, after all of the slings and arrows Heroic had to put up with about being called onliners, who are the fucking real onliners now, boys? You know, it's definitely not Heroic, is it? So, and when you think about all of the reasons they would have had to crumble and capitulate, nearly did, by the way, in the challenges stage. Yeah. It wasn't a given they were even going to get this far. You know, they were the real Cinderella story of this whole major for me. And they can feel very good about the account they gave of themselves. And so with that, we arrive at the final. G2 versus Na'Vi. You know, I actually think this is one of the better major finals we've ever had.
Pretty good.
Just in terms of a spectacle. I know Ancient was G2's pick. It was a bold pick. I love the pick, by the way. It was ballsy. It was out of left field. They knew they were going to have to do something, you know, to try and break up Na'Vi's dominance. It didn't quite work out for them. But the fact that they should have won on Nuke is... I don't know. And by the way, if you looked at Na'Vi on the stage, I think Electronic was shouting at people. They were breaking down. Na'Vi were feeling the heat. That G2 will have lots of regrets and night terrors about this, for sure. I'll talk about just obviously the big moment, the whiff. People say it's a whiff. Some people were saying it was CSGO. It wasn't. The crosshair was just slightly off. Nico was trying to compensate, and if you look, I think Simple just moves. But I saw Nico at the event, at the after party, when everyone was wrecked up. And even though, you know, we've had many jokes at his expense down the years, and we've talked about how he's been problems in teams in the past, he's a fucking hell of a player and a guy that I, you know, as a competitor, respect immensely. And you could see how he's devastated about that whiff. So I made a point of saying to him, like, at the end of the day, you wouldn't even been in the final if it weren't for you. Like, the margin of defeat for your team cannot be when you make one mistake. And I think it shook him like big time, and I hope it doesn't affect him moving forward. He doesn't deserve that. He doesn't deserve to be remembered for that whiff. Now, unfortunately, it's one of those things that's going to come up time and time again. It was a pivotal moment. It's a 2v2, even though you've only got pistols in hand. It's a Deagle. You're Nico, legendary Deagle player. You've got the iconic call from Alex in the final. An absolute disaster. He's nailed it. It's up there with one of the all-time great calls. And unfortunately, it's a moment that's going to be replayed a lot in his career. He's just got to forget about that. Like, they had no right to be ahead in that map. They were doing it because of him. They had no right to be in the final. They got there because of him. So I hope Nico can just sort of shelve this and think, okay, Simple's got his major, mine's next.
Yes. I mean, listen, I will say in the final, he wasn't as good as he was in the other matches, aside from part of that Nuke game where he was doing very well. But no, I agree. Like, that's the key thing to me. It reminds me of when Simple made those majors in the past. And it's like, mate, if anything, you've made it harder for yourself now, because since you've won a semi-final, you had no business winning. Now you're going to only get scrutinised for what happens at the end of the tournament, which is now the final. And in his case, just like Nico here, you're playing against an era-defining team, like one of the best teams in the entire world. So no, there's a world where they lost to Nip. I know a lot of people of the analysts had that as touch and go. Like, some people think I might pick Nip on this one. I picked G2, but I didn't know Nico would go fucking ham, of course. So yeah, I think he was absolutely phenomenal. In fact, I think the saddest thing about this major, remember, I said I didn't want G2 to make a deep run here. I wanted them to either go out in the Swiss system or go out in the quarterfinals, because I wanted them to be forced to make massive roster moves. Because, mate, I can't handle fans. They're so stupid, it's unbelievable. You know how many fans were telling me that this performance performance showed that you should never say it's just Nico and that the whole team's fine in G2 because they made it to the final, almost beat Na'Vi. You stupid motherfuckers. You are aware the numbers Nico posted would have just won him the MVP of any other major pretty much in history. Like this sort of performances, like that's like prime Cold Zero where everyone's like, that's impossible. How are the numbers so insane? Like, except the difference is he doesn't play like bait style like Cold Zero. He fucking dominates everyone with raw fucking unbelievable aim. So like, yeah, the idea that like you think that this team's fine. If Nico just showed you this team cannot win the major because he just played lights out superhuman Counterstrike and couldn't win. And I also agree about the final. The problem the final has is this. People will think, well, it's just Nuke, wasn't it? No, the first half of it was mad back and forwards. It was looking like a really great game. And I even already had a vibe then of like, fuck, this isn't the Na'Vi I was watching those other games. Like, mate, they're getting tested right now. People haven't shown up. The problem is, as I said on the desk, this team just had too many people that could frag. And so the longer you make the game wait, they're going to wake up, mate. They're not just going to play 30 rounds in a row and all be bad. So as you saw, Simple did that shit where like you look away and then you look back after the second half. Like, how's he got 20 AWP kills or something? You know, same thing on Nuke. At one point, he wasn't doing that great compared to Nico and the G2 boys. By the end of the map, I mean, I will say, we should have put this on the other episode. I just realised how mad this is, by the way. Do you know another detail that someone pointed out to me? I didn't think of it even myself in the moment. Supposedly on the broadcast, you know when they would show like that weird thing where it would just pick two random players on the team and go like Amanek versus Bit, even though it's like they don't even play the same role. Dude, when they showed the graphic for Simple after the Nuke game, they said he had 50 kills. He didn't have 50 kills. They just completely fucked us up the arse with that, mate. He never had 50 kills. He had like 40 kills or something. They just, I'm just bungled. It's only the major final. I put 5 instead of 4 there. Say that on screen, dickhead. Like, I'm so sick of shit like that. Because you know what pisses me off, Richard, is a fan doesn't get it. They go, well, if you just watched the game, you wouldn't say it. If I put a light on you right now, you forget what your fucking address, mate. People don't know what it's like to be on camera. Like, if information, it's why I famously said for all those years, you know this, that I wanted every map veto to have all the maps on screen.
Yeah.
I don't care. It could be like, you could pick fucking anyone you want. Pick Glaive. He would forget maps that exist if he doesn't have them on the screen. I'm telling you. It's just what happens. So anyway, the point I was making was this, is like, by the end of Nuke, yeah, even Simple had gone supernova and had all the numbers in the world, etc. So I agree. Put it this way, that even though players love to say this, there really are just 1 or 2 rounds that if they broke differently on map 1 or map 2, that would have been a really interesting series. Like, I would have loved it if that had gone to a third map. Because I agree with you. I think Na'Vi was
as well.
They were ready to fucking sort of potentially capitulate.
Yeah, I mean, listen, just to put a pin in the G2 talk, and then we can wax lyrical about Na'Vi. You know, for me, I think it's kind of telling that Carlos was there. For those that don't know, Ocelot flew out, the G2 owner. Carlos was there. He watched it. He made a point of coming. He would literally travel into NA immediately. I got to have a few shots with him. I was saying to him, like, you're going to have to make some roster moves, aren't you, mate, if you want to go to the next level? And he was like, my lips are sealed. We had some tequila shots and he bailed. But I do feel that, like, listen, they gave a great account of themselves, Jackson, Amanek. I think they're out. I mean, they are the odd ones out on this team, right? Like, Hunter and Nico are definitely a pair. I don't think Nex has done anything particularly bad.
He's actually fairly good at this major. I'll give him credit.
Yeah, and exactly. I think he performed well, and obviously he's the IGL as well, right? So it's just a question of who they're going to get. Now, what people don't realise was there was a bit of banter on the broadcast between the Na'Vi owner and Carlos, which, by the way, credit to the Na'Vi guy as well. Like, he actually was doing good banter despite the language barrier. There was a lot of cool stuff there, and they had some good stuff on social during the major. Really added to the event. But, you know, when Carlos says he would literally buy Simple tomorrow, he would put... He's not fucking... He means it. He 100% means it. And Na'Vi know that. And 100% obviously will never sell, and definitely not to G2. Carlos is a gangster. He will not fuck around with any of this stuff. So whoever he buys to come to this you better believe he is going to spend, and he is going to buy legit players.
This way, I'll just make a statement for people so they understand the level we're talking about. It's not just big talk. Literally, I'm telling you right now, you'll have to just believe me or not believe me. If Ziwu said yes and Vitality said yes, Ziwu would be on G2 right now.
Yeah.
Or in the next few months. Like, I agree with what Richard's saying here. It's not even just that he goes, if I could, I would buy Simple. That means he reached out to Simple, and Simple said, sorry, I'm saying in Na'Vi. Like, this guy's actually done his due diligence. He's really trying to make, like, epic scene-changing moves.
Yeah, well, he's done it. He's done it consistently. I mean, the Nico move was one of the biggest transfers like at all time at the moment it dropped, and you know,
Massive one, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I literally think, you know, well, it's like, listen, Jax, mate. If you ever do watch this podcast, like from time to time, you're one of the players I've been the most wrong about in all of my life. Like you legit definitely deserve to be on a top tier team, you know, irrespective of age. And you gave a wicked account of yourself across G2. Amanek for me as well. Obviously, you know, going back to when Sean Gares was talking about this guy, like, you know, turns out he is a legit player with many strings to his bow. Unfortunately, can you be on the number 1 team in the world? No, but that, you know, but right now you might be on the number 2. You know, there ain't nothing wrong with that. You can still have a really good career, but G2 are thinking about the next major for sure. And if they want to get it, and if Nico wants to get his, he can't do it with this roster. It's just going to fall short, unfortunately. So,
for me, by the way, that's where those G2 fans got it totally wrong. You don't look at this performance and go, wow, we're so close. No, that was the best. That was the best you could have hoped for, and you didn't win. What you should look at that tournament, and if you're Nico and you're G2, Nico, you turn to G2 and you go, give me a team like Simplaz, and I'll do that. I'll win that major for you. Because, yeah, he's ready, mate. He's obviously ready. He's been ready for years. But he needs to have the right team around him. And that is, listen, it was certainly a team that overperformed, fair play, but they're not a good enough team to win the major. Come on.
No. And then, obviously, Na'Vi, hands down, best team in the world. What a turnaround from the start of the year, and certainly the year prior to that, which makes the flamey stuff even funnier in retrospect. That so many of the Na'Vi Defence Force are going to put up for him when he was a massive factor in holding you back. And had he still been part of this team, I don't even know where you finish in the top 8. But, you know, this Imperious March was predicated on a lot of things. And obviously simple, hands down best player, greatest of all time. I don't even think it's a controversial statement or anything now. He just is what he is. But the big things that obviously changed is the discovery of Bit, the development of Bit, and the fact that he actually turned out, despite being a rookie, not only to be a LANimal, like he can do it at LAN and will not get phased. We're probably talking about the best rookie pickup of all time, right? On top of that, Electronic, who he's had some shaky series and, you know, has fallen a bit behind Bit in the pecking order in the online era. He was fucking insane at this major. I mean, insane. You know, getting opening kills, playing like an absolute gangster. Like you could see that experience and swagger he had. Probably another player, by the way, that didn't put much stock in the online era, but didn't open his mouth about it and just wanted to get it done at LAN. And boy, did he do it at LAN. And then when you throw in Boomich, even had some, you know, good games here in terms of individual fragging performances. Perfecto, old reliable CIS Zipniks. In fact, I'd probably rather have the CIS Zipniks than Zipniks, you know, these days. So at the end of the day, Na'Vi have assembled an absolutely complete team. And I don't even know right now, and it's all roster move dependent. Roster Mania is going to have a big say on it. But I don't know who can beat this Na'Vi, especially now they've got the self-confidence and the proof of concept that they can rock up to any LAN and not drop a map.
Oh, no one can. Like, as of right now, I can't think of any team I'm hearing about. Like, forget the new Vitality one. We'll talk about it next episode. But it's not going to instantly just roll up and beat Na'Vi. Like, the thing is, Na'Vi at the moment, you actually need some of the factors to go against them from within their own team. You need someone like Bit to have have an odd-off tournament. You need it to go back online, so maybe Electronic's not as good. Even then, by the way, they'll still probably be the number 1 team. As you say, they've just got so many insane qualities to them. And yeah, especially if you're going to be on LAN at a major and have this level of fragging, you almost shouldn't be able to lose. Like, I know it sounds mad to people because it almost reminds me of, like, in football, for example. As much as you want to make it a beautiful game and a tactical team, if you just make a team like when Barcelona had those 3 strikers up front and they were all Suarez and they were just banging in like 20 goals each. Yeah, if you just score like 6 goals a game, turns out you win the game. Doesn't actually matter how good your defense is in that team, does it? Like, you just outscore the other team. It's the hardest way to win in Counterstrike, but I tell you what, if you can do it, you will look fucking amazing. So this team, the only teams you can even compare it to was like Team Liquid 2019, the old FaZe clan. Like, no one's ever had firepower on this level. It's bonkers.
So I had 2 questions for you, because obviously there's only so much you can say about Na'Vi that we didn't even say at the event. You know, for me, Like right now, you know, I don't think any team is close. I'm excited to see, you know, maybe G2 can do something. Maybe Gambit can sort of learn from this and bounce back. You know, like say that vitality team. Yeah, who knows, right? Who knows? But right now, it's going to take something that is not on anyone's radar to disrupt Na'Vi. And I'm glad, because I've been saying since 2019, I think, you know, when they took Katowice back then, I was like, we should be in the Na'Vi era. The problem always was the fucking flamey problem. They weren't bedding in bit blades, out-of-date tactics. Like, a lot has changed in this Na'Vi team to bring them to the stage they're at now. And as I said, the scary thing is they've got that confidence and self-belief. But one question I wanted to ask you as the esports historian, where do you rate this Na'Vi team that's just done what it did at the major in terms of all the other great dynastic era teams?
The problem they're obviously going to have is they won 2 big lands. Obviously, I'm not counting Katowice in 2020. That was with Flame, and it was so long ago now. But if we look at, they won Cologne and they won this major. That's obviously very impressive. The problem is, obviously, all the other great teams in history, everything was LAN. Everything. Like, half of the teams, this is how little online CS mattered back then. Most people wouldn't even be able to tell me the online results teams mattered back then. Like, did they win Pro League Online? Who was better, Envious or LDLC? Who the fuck knows? No one remembers because it just didn't matter back then. So my problem is, if I just look individually at this one major and I forget the context, it was one of the most dominant I've ever seen, of course. It was unbelievable. They literally, if people don't get it, we're not exaggerating, they weren't tested until literally, I'd say, like, you might count the first half of it, but ultimately they still closed the map. Basically till the last map of the tournament. The map that they actually was like their fortress where they were like 17 wins in a row or something. So they definitely have to be up there in terms of like a one-off tournament. Like, this is up there with like when VP rampaged over Katowice and fucking, all the greats got the Astralis teams that won with no losses in the playoffs, etc. But the problem is, like, the other teams that had the eras and stuff, these teams have like 6 months of like back-to-back lands where, you know, like a bad performance, you come top 4 one time. So I think, unfortunately, the online part will probably water it down a little bit and it'll make it not as cool historically, you know?
Yeah, maybe. I'm interested because I definitely want to get that content recorded before the end of the year, time permitting, where we do the fucking time travel LAN and we assess all of the teams and who's great thing. I'll set it all up. I've got a guy making graphics for it and everything, so we'll get that done. But I thought after the major would be a good time for it because for me, I don't even know where I would put them. I think about where they're at, taking on some of the great teams head to head. I think they're further up than a lot of people might want to, give them credit for, even in sort of era dependent. I agree the sample size is small, but I think what we're going to get, over the next few events they attend and the start of next year, I think you're just going to see dominance. I just think it's going to be...
Oh, it feels inevitable.
Yeah,
this
is it now.
If we're taking one tournament, like if I just take the team from the major, I drop them into, like you're saying, like a virtual environment where I have, like, Fnatic 2015, and, they might be the best. They have a chance. They're in the conversation. Just look how insane the team is.
Yeah, so... we'll wait and see about that. But just one final thing, since we'll end on a bit of fun. And I'm not going to do viewer questions today because we'll just do a bumper. Well, roster mania and the viewer questions. We'll tie it all together because there is some roster questions in there as well. So obviously, I'll just do that flamey thing because it's just a nice little palate cleanser to end on. Why is everyone wrecking Yanko over this? So for those who don't know, basically, Flamey has been playing for Na'Vi Academy, which, by the way, just cut him loose, guys. Like just cut him loose. Like, what, is he such a big draw that having him around is good? What's he going to teach these cunts as well? Like, how to piss away a career? That's the last thing you need to be teaching these guys. But anyway...
need someone to show the other players that it's more important to focus on racing sports than an actual big stage match. We'd just have Sadikis join the team, wouldn't we?
Not bad.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, not bad.
All factually accurate as well, so you can get mad with me.
Yeah, true. So anyway, just click on Sam. Can you play this clip for me? Right. You don't need to 3-2-1 it. Just let us know when you're playing it.
It's so mental, though. The whole thing's just so ridiculous.
Yeah. So, I mean, for those that don't understand the context, Yeah, cheers. Basically, Navi Junior were playing in the We Play Academy finals, right? And literally, they were in the grand final against Mao's NXT, who, by the way things are going, you might want to play them because they won the event. And in between maps, they just cut to Flamey, and he is just watching a stream of a popular Russian streamer playing Forza, while the other team are in a huddle, the ones that are one map up at this point, right? And his teammates are doing like deathmatch and like warming up and stuff. And somehow, by the way, I never thought I would be in a world where Reddit had the best take, because all the comments in the Reddit thread are all going, yeah, this is ridiculous. It's like super unprofessional. It shows he's not dialed in. You know, when you consider he like probably doesn't want to be in the academy side, it's bad optics. He's a bad role model. All of the Reddit comments are pretty much aligned like that. But then Yanko made this point on Twitter where he said, what a joke. How checked out do you have to be to do something like that? I get it. Navi probably is a bit sentimental about him. But at this point, you just need to remove him. It's unfair to the young guys working their ass off to get to the next level. By the way, not only a very reasonable take. Like, if it was my team, I'd be like, why are you... You'd be getting a clip round the ear. Like, you know, turn that off. Wake the fuck up. We got a final to win, you know. I don't give a what you're watching Forza. But obviously, Navi Defense Force was out. You've got Twists in there, right, saying, what's your problem? He's just finding ways to reset after having a bad map, right? You've got players going, it's like, what's the difference between this and going outside the smoke between games? Ethan, by the way, a player who literally pissed away his EG money playing Valorant on the sly. Don't really know if you're the guy I'm going to for motivational advice about how to be a top-level competitor, right? So, and just loads of replies, just wrecking Yanko, saying that it's like some sort of bullying against Flamey. Let us be clear. Flamey was given chance after chance after chance to stay on Navi, right? They kept him. Even when they discovered a player as good as Bit, who we are now saying one of the best rookie pickups of all time, they didn't even drop Flamey then. They were playing him on Nuke / Inferno, using him occasionally, trying to excuse it, giving Flamey the final chance, the last chance, right? And he didn't take it. He didn't raise his game. You had Blade. By the way, if you think Yanko's take's terrible, you must hate Blade, because Blade, when he was in your interview and in other bits of media, he said, yeah, I think Flamey needs time off to reset. I don't think his mentality's right. He said in, I think it was your interview where he said, I don't think Flamey's actually got it to be a top-level player right now. He struggles to get concepts. So why would you ever excuse the senior player on the junior team, the guy I'm sure all the players are psyched to be playing with and look up to, just sat there in a final? Are we ready to go, lads? Absolutely not for me. Not for me. Maybe some people do need to be babied. Maybe some people do need to listen to some music to get into the headspace. But you better be sat down at your PC in those 15 minutes and ready to fucking game. Especially, by the way, he was the second worst player in the academy side in this final. Like, fuck this guy. Just retire. You're a millionaire anyway. And Navi fans will pretend you were some sort of legendary player. ESL will even pretend you're some sort of legendary player. Everyone's going to rewrite history for you, mate. Even though the minute you're out the door, look what Navi become. Fucking hell. By the way, as well, on his bio, he just had the words dead inside before this. And it's like, how do you think Navi fans, how do you think Simple feels, you cunt? He had to play with you for fucking 3 years. Outrageous.
The thing I can't handle about this is it's like what people on Reddit try to do to me all the time. Where, as I've explained before, you take my statement, you remove all the actual context, you just make it what I didn't say, and then you explain how stupid what I didn't say was because you think I said it, which I never did. So Yanko's point here, by the way, makes perfect sense. But Twists and Ethan haven't even engaged their motherfucking brain and given him the decency to ask what point was he making. So their point that they're replying goes, is it ever acceptable to in any way in the break between two maps on stage do anything other than Counterstrike? Yes, of course it is, you fucking clown. That was never the point ever being made. This is the context of what Flamey just did. Flamey is not playing a real final. This is not a real tournament. It is a motherfucking exhibition league to develop young players. The only reason Flamey is in Na'Vi Academy is in theory to be a veteran player who can be an example that the young player who might have skills in the game can copy from to learn how to become a pro. So the one thing he needs to do is maintain the highest level of professionalism. He doesn't even have to be good. He can be the second worst player like you're saying, Richard. All he has to do is show those players when you're in a LAN final, what you do between map 1 and map 2 is you maybe reset, but then you get yourself back into the game and you re-engage your competitive mindset. Instead, he's just literally the one slacking off, fucking around, looking like he doesn't care at all, thereby utterly failing his only job requirement. Now, what that would have to do with Twists, who's never been in that scenario, and Ethan, who doesn't even play CSGO anymore, is beyond me. Because as far as I can tell, they've done that dog shit thing people do, where they just project themselves, and they're just thinking of a time they were in like a stage match, and maybe, you know, they watched a YouTube video to reset from something before, or they just sat back and thought, oh, chill out, mate, it's all going to be okay. They're thinking of themselves. You're not in Flamey's position. Like I said, his only role is to be the veteran. You don't really think, by the way, they're hoping he frags out and then they maybe sign into the Na'Vi squad. He's already had that portion of his career. So I actually think this is another example of where people just pick someone and they just decide, you're wrong no matter what. I haven't figured out how yet, but I'll just figure it out as I go. And you haven't even attempted to address his actual point. Like, obviously that's pathetic. Flamey is essentially only in that team to be a pro, and he is not being a pro in that moment, is he?
Check it out, right? He even replied that he hadn't done this when I went live with the show. And he said, calm down. This is Tianko, obviously. I was playing aimbots, but when the rest left to get to the toilet break, I was watching a stream. And anyway, I'm not in Na'Vi Junior. That's just one tournament. Brilliant. You've aced it with a super professional reply. How can anyone fucking root for this guy? Like, all the chances he's had. And that's like, yeah, mate, you're dead weight on an academy side, you cunt. Retire, hurry the fuck up and retire. So ridiculous. But yeah, listen, Yanko was right. Anyone who says otherwise, go run a team. I'm sure it'll be hilarious. I expect players, by the way, to excuse all types of outrageous behaviour from other players as well. Mate. Yeah, of course, like, so whatever that. No, but you don't understand what it's like. You've never been. Yanko, who's coached, like, you know, top teams and had to deal with all the egotistical bullshit from the parental side. Anyway, thought that was fun. I'll talk that. You know this show. We always keep it real. And that's that. That is all of the major talk. Now, as I said, if you did just join the stream partway through, and you're going, well, where's all the drama, Richard? Where's all the drama about how PGL are bad and everything's bad and Thorin was meant to be in the show match and the old boys club? We've already pre-recorded that one. It'll be out in the next day or two. Sam, what's your ETA?
Either tomorrow or the day after. I'm halfway through the edit, mate.
There you go. I love it. Nice commitment from Sam. Always good. So it'll be out soon. You'll know it in the YouTube channel because it will have instead of the usual yellow and black, it will be green and black because it will be called the Major Green Room Edition. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, I mean, basically for me, it was a great major in terms of the playoff games we got. Certainly wasn't a great major to work. But just in pure historic terms, you know, Simple gets his. It couldn't be more deserved. Na'Vi cement their #1 status, and we got a fantastic final, one of the better ones we've had in CS history, and we broke the viewership record. So plenty of positives if you are a CS scene aficionado. Anyway, all that remains to be done is to have one last shout out to the sponsors, NordVPN. Go to nordvpn.com/RLS, take advantage of the discount. Go to Steel Series. You can do !Steel Series. Follow that link. Use my name, Richard Lewis, with no space. 10% off anything in the store. And, of course, shout out to our patrons. Our $100 patron, Jerky's Minion, Michael, Benakagi, Carv, Cathal, Cred, J-Dubs, Marcus Chiumpa, Tobias Bernasconi, Will the Weed Wrangler, and our $50 patrons, Adam Ox, Alex C, A-Rammer, BP420, Bacon, Bitcoin Cash Podcast, Can of Pasito, Chronic Alcoholic, New, C-Mac, Dancer Master, Echo, Fursock, Goody Woody, Gerhan Kaya, John P, J Ray, Judas, Miss Alcoholic, seeing the theme, Nolan, Otarian, Reykjavik on Steam, Sad Sawar, The Bear, Tim Frost, Lonnie, Watchdoge, Zumba, and Zarathenia. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you very soon for the Rostermania episode when we'll pick up your questions. And until then, take care of yourself.